Hello, everyone. Welcome in. My name is Wax Philosophical, and I like to wax the philosophical. And today is Tuesday. Today is Newsday. Every time I say that, I'm like, it's Tuesday, but it's Monday. Sorry if you all are experiencing the Monday scaries. It must not be fun for everybody who has to go to work. But hopefully you make it through the day as quickly as possible, and it turns out better than you ever expected it to. With that being said, it is August 10th, 2026, and today we've got a little bit of news today. It is going to be a bit of a shorter stream. We're going to do like 3 hours today because I got other stuff that I got to do. But we will be covering Netanyahu rejects Donald Trump's new 15-point plan for Gaza, unsurprisingly, because Netanyahu is incredibly unreasonable. So honestly, who's shocked in any sort of way? Then we have a genocide survivor story that we're going to be watching. Oh, I forgot to pull up the other Phil. We're going to watch the other Philip DeFranco, as he goes through either roadblocks or something else. I'm not quite sure. We will see that. And then we might do some body cam reacts of a little bit of reaction. Sleeping in your car can get you arrested. And then we might play Elden Ring, depending on how much time we have. So I hope that everybody is ready for the day and is excited about what we're going to have to cover today. Thankfully, it's been relatively slow for the news. No new, lettuce poop or anything like that. No new bombings. There was an earthquake, a very massive earthquake. I think it was in Colombia. I can't quite remember. We're going to cover that too. But yeah, other than that, it's been pretty slow for news, which I personally like because no news is good news, despite the fact that I report on it. So we are going to have a chill day today. And I'm just going to do a quick plug for those who don't want to stick around for the rest of the stream. This coming Sunday, we have another movie night at 7 p.m. is when the stream starts. We're going to be going a little bit earlier to talk about flock cameras and stuff like that because we're actually going to be watching Enemy of the State featuring Will Smith, and I think that it's pretty relevant to today. So we're going to do a little bit of an intro discussing, the ever-increasing surveillance state that is happening in the United States and what's going on there. And then we're going to move on to watch the movie, and then after the movie we'll have movie night. The movie officially starts around 7:30 p.m. or usually shortly after. But without further ado, let's head on over into politics. Oh, there I am. Are we going to have infinite me's again? Oh, there we go. Yep, there we go. Hi. Hello. I hope everybody's doing good today. So the first story that we're going to be covering is going to be about it was Colombia. They were struck by a 7.4 magnitude earthquake just earlier today. So
the powerful 7.4 magnitude earthquake has struck western Colombia.
Oh my God. That's going to be terrifying. Reports of people trapped.
Oh, wow.
We don't know how many people, if there are any fatalities. I would be surprised if there are not. We just don't remember yet.
One official says there is severe
terrifying
damage to buildings. You can only imagine seeing that video, and that people are trapped. The mayor of one city says at least 2 people are dead there, and the U.S. Geological Survey warns that the level of shaking could mean significant casualties. The epicenter was located about 250 miles west of Colombia's capital. CNN meteorologist Derek Van Dam is keeping a close eye on this story. So, Derek, the initial quake was 7.4. What sort of aftershocks are we seeing here?
We've already had aftershocks of magnitude 5.0 and greater. So what you're looking at now is one of 6 airports that have sustained damage from the original earthquake, that magnitude 7.4. I'm going to show a series of videos because we're going to try and tie all these pieces together. You're looking at Cali, Colombia, near...
Okay, I just gotta say quickly, kudos to people who are fast enough to bring out the camera. I'm so fucking boomer, I would probably 5 minutes later after the entire thing, fumbling on my fucking phone, being like, how the hell do I record right now? and panic brain and stuff like that also. So kudos to the people that have the sense about them to like record the situation that they're going through. Look at all of the damage that's being done, like all the plumes of smoke and stuff like that for the are a result of like, I'm assuming that there's probably fires and stuff like that that are spouted out, and then just disruption to the earth in general.
The epicenter. And I want you to see all the dust in the background here from this elevated position. These are buildings that have sustained severe damage, if not full collapse. And there have been reports coming out of this region that at least 20 buildings have collapsed. Of course, people trapped under the rubble. That is not good news. And then we take you to the ground, and this is what it looks like in Cali, Colombia. And you can see rescue efforts, first responders digging through the rubble amongst the aftershocks that are happening as we speak. So again, this is about 250 miles west of Bogota. The epicenter was actually about 100 kilometers below the surface. That's important. I'll tell you why in a minute. But let's talk about what the USGS does in these moments. They take previous earthquakes in similar tectonic plates, and they can compare them with the magnitude and give an estimate on the potential number of fatalities. It's a grim subject to discuss, but it's the reality we're facing. And they say, according to this analysis from the USGS, nearly 1 in 3 chance that there are over 1,000 fatalities from this particular earthquake. This is an intermediately deep earthquake, the epicenter. If it was near the surface, I would expect even more widespread damage than what we've seen. But regardless, we've got nearly 2 million people that have felt the very strong shaking from this powerful earthquake. And we expect aftershocks to continue. In fact, on average, we see with a 7.4 original earthquake, we have on average about 10 5.0 or greater aftershocks, maybe even a 6.0 or greater aftershock. That is certainly possible. These types of earthquakes and this power are very rare. We only get about 15 of them worldwide per year. And of course, anything above.
Gonna be honest with you, 15 of these a year still seems pretty freaking high. Like, that's a high number in my opinion. 15 major earthquakes is holy crow. Minor ones, though, we get 130,000 minor earthquakes per year. How many is that a day? That's like thousands per day. Holy crow, I had no idea. 1,300 light ones per year. Again, that's hundreds per day. Moderate ones, only 1,319. Strong ones, 134. Major ones, 15. And then great ones, only 1, which is a magnitude 8 plus higher.
An 8.0. That is
the area that I live in. There's always been this long held myth that we're going to have what we call the quote unquote great one that's going to end up like basically destroying our entire city. It's never happened, but for some reason, because like I grew up constantly hearing that, it's kind of like always in the back of my mind, and it makes me so glad that I don't live in our epicenter of like the city. But if it does happen, it could literally happen anywhere within the area that I live, which is terrifying. And one time when I was working a job in security, we had to do some security training. And, you know, there's an estimate in the city that I live in that there would be like, they said, I'm assuming this is an overestimate, there would be like 15 feet of like glass, like lining the streets, because our city has like so many high rises buildings and stuff like that. When there's an earthquake, it like shatters all the windows and stuff. And so there's an estimate that there could be like a high level of like at least 15 feet of glass, which seems a little bit of an overestimate, but like still it's just like, oh, okay, well, that's terrifying. It's just constant reinforcement that the world is going to like basically crack open in your city and everybody might perish and die. Fantastic. But it was talking about like how important having a preparedness kit is, even if you don't think that it's necessary, because even if you're not in like the epicenter of like an earthquake, like you still will have difficulty accessing emergency services if you ever need to. The power might go down for an extended amount of time because the crew members who might originally be like sent out to help repair the damages that are done to your area in terms of like infrastructure, they might be trapped or unavailable because they have to take care of like higher priority situations. So you might end up being without power for a very long time. That's why it's always good to have like cooking required non-perishable food items around for like at least a certain amount of time, because you don't know how long you could end up without power. And if your fridge isn't running with electricity, then you will have have no food to eat, and then like you don't know if there's ever going to be looting or anything like that. So it's important to, even if it seems a little bit ridiculous, make sure that you have a properly equipped first aid kit, not just one of the ones that you get at like a local like pharmacist, but actually look into what is required for a properly equipped first aid kit. You want to make sure that you have some way of taking care of sanitation in terms of going to the bathroom, because, if you're not appropriately taking care of the sanitation issues, that is a great way to spread like illness and disease, which is something we've seen recently happening, highlighted in the United States with the second Sephora, I'm saying that wrong, Sephora outbreak on lettuce and stuff like that. It's not just like animal feces that can cause illnesses. It's actually human feces that can cause it too, and human refuge. So making sure that you have a plan to take care of those things, which might often be overlooked, is also really important. And then you want to make sure that you have enough food stores. And I personally think that it's good if you have the capability to have food stores for at least 2 months, right? Like you can always replenish it and eat it as you go and like, stock up and stuff like that. But like, it's good to always make sure that you have some sort of backup and things of the stuff that you need. Obviously it's a luxury, but if you have the capability, I definitely suggest to do it, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know when maybe you have to evacuate, and being able to grab that go bag of stuff is going to save your ass in the long run. You just never know. It's always good to have. But like whenever I hear stories of earthquakes and stuff, this always comes to mind. It's just like, oh yeah, I gotta get on that. I know I'm one to talk. I don't even have it myself, but it's on my list of things to do, and I'm gonna get it done by the end of the year for sure.
Very, very rare. But going back to these videos, Pamela, terrifying moments. We have reports of damage to airports, so that's infrastructure, of course, buildings that have collapsed, and the rubble here that you can clearly see in these first few videos now we're getting out of Western Colombia.
All right, thanks, Derek. Let's go live now to CNN correspondent Stefano Pozibon. Stefano, I know you've covered Colombia. What more can you tell us about this quake?
Yeah. Well, we can understand, Pamela, that this quake has hit one of the most sparsely populated areas of Colombia. Colombia itself is a highly urbanized country where more than 70% of the population actually lives in cities or urban area. And thankfully, the epicenter of this earthquake was in an area densely covered by jungle and the rainforest. However, the majority of the damage seems to be concentrated in the area of Pereira, the city of Pereira, which is a city of about 500,000 people, right at the center of Colombia. It's at a high altitude on top of the mountain, of the Andes mountain, and where we understand that at least 18 people have been killed by the earthquake, according to the local mayor. Substantial damage has been impacted on the local airport, which of course is a crucial aspect of this story, because one thing that I've definitely learned covering the Venezuelan earthquake a couple of months ago is that reaching the areas most affected by this sort of natural disaster is particularly challenging when you don't have the support of aviation. Colombia is also a very hilly country. The region that has been impacted by the earthquake is definitely more mountainous than the plains, and you can imagine that they will need to put the airports back into running as quickly as possible if they want to have supplies in the upcoming hours and days. So the fact that the airport in Pereira has been substantially damaged, of course, is a cause of concern. Like we are saying, at least 20 people killed so far. I was checking with friends and loved ones on the phone as we learned the news. Luckily, all of the people that I was in touch with when I was living in Colombia for the last 6 years have been rescued. We were just chatting if they were able to speak with their relatives or loved ones in the areas most impacted by these quake. Luckily, the number of the casualties seems to be minor compared to the ones in Venezuela a couple of months ago. But that, of course, is the comparison. The story of Venezuela really has shocked the region, South America as a whole, with 2 earthquakes impacting, one in short succession from the other one. it seems like that this is the case for Colombia as well, where several aftershocks have been continuously hitting in the capital. A couple of friends, they just texted me a few moments ago saying that they were in Bogota and they could still feel the aftershocks, Pamela. So we'll try to understand more. The president of Colombia, Abelardo de la Espriella, who has just swore in. He's just at the beginning of his mandate. He was sworn in only on the 7th of August, and he's now facing a major challenge, a major natural crisis, natural disaster crisis that, of course, will challenge the unity of its government. He has called for an emergency meeting of his cabinet. He posted a video from his presidential jet saying that he was heading to the capital, Bogota, to chair this emergency meeting and to make all of the resources necessary available. But of course, we are here still in the very early stages of this story, and we'll bring you the latest as soon as we hear more from the Colombian authorities. Pamela?
Yeah, I mean, 7.4 magnitude earthquake. You know, Colombia is a country that is no stranger to earthquakes, but this is at a really large scale. And I'm wondering, during your time living there, what the concern was for an earthquake of this magnitude and just the preparations or ability to respond on a mass scale.
Yeah, the level of preparation, of course, is different throughout the country. Colombia is in a very uneven country. You live in the city, or especially the area where I was living, the center of Bogota. You don't really have an experience that is so different from living in the West, in the US, for example. But of course, the countryside is a completely different matter. While I was living in Colombia for the last 6 years, I did experience several earthquakes. None of them was of this magnitude. Friends that I've been messaging or calling throughout the afternoon here in Italy have all been saying it's the worst that I've experienced. I never experienced something so bad. Several people have actually been awakened by this earthquake because it hit at 7:30 a.m. in the morning in Colombia, and so several people, they just said that they were being thrown off their beds by the magnitude of this quake. The city of Bogota itself, you can see, I remember that you will go into buildings and you will hear and see the notices on the wall saying that these are quake-safe buildings with built-in technique that are made up to resist to the impact of an earthquake. Of course, the countryside is a completely different matter. All large structures, such as the airport, as I was saying,
complications
in
of
Pereira,
trying to like evacuate injured people from like
biggest
rubble
area of
like
concern
this.
because it's very hard to travel around the countryside in Colombia, and you need air travel to get the supplies that the first responders will need in the areas that are most impacted by the earthquake. So I hope that they will be able to have the airports and the runways up and running as quickly as possible.
Let's talk with Gladys Gonzalez from the International Crisis Group, who felt the earthquake in Bogota. You felt the earthquake as far away as Bogota, but I'm certainly glad that you are safe. I just want to talk about the likely impact of this quake, because obviously the first thing that I thought about was the fact that just about 6 weeks ago in neighboring Venezuela, we had two twin earthquakes that measured 7.2 and 7.5 on the Richter scale. This one in Colombia is 7.4, and obviously there are various factors, including the depth of the earthquake, that determines really the consequences. But just walk us through how concerned people are about what the death toll may be, especially when we consider that in Venezuela we're now talking about 61,000 people dead. Walk us through what the concern is about how things may end up in Colombia.
Yes, thank you so much for the invitation. Well, right now the most serious impacts have been reported in some parts of the country, a region known as Eje Cafetero, mainly cities like Manizales, Pereira, Armenia, and Cali have had the most serious affectations of the earthquake. There has been reports of injured people, collapsed buildings, and so far we don't know the extent of the magnitude of the damage that this has caused, but this certainly adds to or raises a concern about the aftermath and the implications that it will have in these areas in terms of reconstruction, attention to victims and people that lost their property.
One of the things that essentially really amplified the crisis in neighboring Venezuela is the resources the capacity of the healthcare infrastructure and just the infrastructure overall. What are things like it in neighboring Colombia?
Well, we have seen here that authorities have moved very fast to see and evaluate the damages so far. So I think the response has been very quick. They are very solid institutions that are in charge of crisis management and attending these sort of disasters. And so we can expect that to also help or aid for the response to be quicker. All the institutions move very effectively to address any damage or attend any issue that may arise.
And obviously, you know, whenever you have any large earthquake, there is an immediate fear about aftershocks, you know, other sort of smaller earthquakes that may happen. What are authorities near the epicenter telling locals?
Well, yes, that's definitely a normal part of the after an earthquake, and considering this one was so impactful and so intense, and to expect aftershocks. So I think people are very aware and very attentive of this to be in the duration of the day and even tomorrow to feel any aftershocks of the earthquake.
As I understand it, the last sort of major earthquake that Colombia has seen of this kind of level on the Richter scale was many years ago. And I think in 1999, there was a 6.2 magnitude earthquake that killed over 1,000 people. And obviously, you know, it's very difficult to just look at the level at the Richter scale alone, because obviously the depth and the shallowness of the earthquake is really what determines how it impacts buildings. But talk us through how common smaller earthquakes are, particularly in Western Colombia.
Well, yes, there are parts of Colombia that are very used to small earthquakes, and the moving of earth is very normal, and people have assumed it as part of their everyday life. But as you said, an earthquake in this scale has not been registered in the past years. It felt very intense, and I think it also adds to the already existing grave humanitarian crisis that the country is living in, and the impact that they will have.
Like Galais Gonzalez, appreciate you being with us, and I'm glad you're safe there and nearby Bogota. Thank you so much.
All right. What?
This is Democracy Now! Democracy Now!
Consistent torture. When is this from? 6 hours ago? Consistent torture. Keith Lamar speaks from death row after receiving 3-year execution reprieve. I wonder why it was only 3 years. We'll watch this quickly also, and then we will move on to Gaza and Trump and the update there. Just a second. The Alabama solution, Oscar-nominated film, uses prison cell phones to expose deadly prisons. Okay, we can save this for later, for another stream. I'll watch it off stream and see if it's actually good for us to watch. Otherwise, we're going to watch Democracy Now! Excuse me. Fantastic show.
The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in Edinburgh, Scotland, with Nermeen Sheikh in New York.
On Friday, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine issued reprieves for 3 men on death row, citing the difficulty of procuring lethal injection drugs from pharmaceutical suppliers. The execution dates of the 3 men.
Isn't that wild that I remember a story a little while ago, and I can't remember where specifically in the United States it was. I think it was Texas, most likely, where the reason why they had to stop doing executions is not because they got some sort of moral feeling that it was so inappropriate, which it is. I am personally not for the death penalty, not necessarily because I don't think that this is one of my lesser woke opinions, that there aren't people that are so dangerous out there that the most humane thing that you could do for them is legitimately the death penalty, because the alternative, in order to keep the prison population safe from them, is to keep them in solitary confinement away from other people. And, until, there is appropriate prison reform where they can allow people who are, that dangerous to still have some level of access to other people. Solitary confinement is such a disgusting practice. In my opinion, it's incredibly inhumane. It is frequently used as a punishment, and it has such a negative impact on people's mental health that it can literally drive people to insanity. There was like this experiment that somebody ran a while ago about people being alone in cubicles, essentially, like living cubes for a while, completely isolated from everybody else, including any sort of media, any sort of including from seeing the time to do an experiment to see how long people could stay in those boxes. The goal was for 7 days, and I think the longest somebody lasted was 24 hours. We'll watch that on stream sometime too. I'll look it up. It's incredibly interesting to see the impact and how people tried to cope. And it's just it was an experiment in solitary confinement, because when you're in solitary confinement, you don't get to talk to anybody. You don't even get to know what time it is. You have no idea what's going on in the outside world. It is incredibly isolated. It's almost like having locked in syndrome, except you're even further isolated because you're not in the hospital where there's at least other people around that you might be able to hear the goings on of what's happening. And it really screws with you. And I feel solitary confinement in and of itself is a really a horrible practice, and it's something that the prison system needs to figure out a more humane method of dealing with people that or you either get sent there because you are personally in so much danger that you can't be in Gen Pop, or you are such a danger to Gen Pop that you have to be isolated from the general population, and solitary confinement is often used as that. Sometimes it'll just be used as a punishment. And so for now, it's just well, the best option is, maybe, death row, unfortunately. But alternatively to that, there are so many innocent people on death row. I think it's something like 3% of people are on death row are innocent and get executed. And it's just for that alone, given that there is no genuine foolproof way for the justice system to 100% know, it's just the best we have right now. We're not going to get into the whole concept of Minority Report or anything like that. But it's the best system that it's the best system that we have right now. Just for that principle alone, I don't understand how people can be yeah, that 3% of innocent people are just our sacrificial lambs, and it's okay to continue this practice. Even just for those people alone, aside from the inhumanity of the practice, I understand that people's desires, because some people can commit horrible crimes and things of that nature and take a lot of people's lives. But given we have, presidents who bomb children's schools, and nobody's calling for them to be put on death row, there's no judicial call or anything like that, I don't think that there's any real moral leg to stand on for people who genuinely back the death penalty or think that it's appropriate. Obviously, I'm coming from a place of luxury. I've never had anybody in my family, violently murdered or anything like that. So I don't know. I don't think that I would change my tune if that would happen. But there's this thing that I talk about frequently, which is, the way that you feel and the way that you think versus what you would actually want to have happen and what you would actually want to do. So there's fantasy land, and then there's the reality of what you actually think is appropriate and what should actually be done. So, hi, sorry. Hi, Duncan. I'm sorry. I don't believe in logic. You don't believe in logic, Duncan. Cyrex, welcome in, Nodders. You liberals don't accept diarrhea worms and keep insulting them. You have no right to talk about morality. What are you talking about, Duncan? Welcome in. Hi, Cyrex. I'm so sorry that I missed your messages, guys. I was busy on a rant. I hope you're all right. JK? Okay, thank goodness. Yeah, I how I feel about the death penalty is that it should be abolished. I think that it's an absolutely disgusting practice. But I can understand where some people come from when it comes to some people who committed crimes. A prime example would be somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer, who was a serial killer who murdered a prolific number of people and went uncontested for years because the police force cared so little about the victims that he was targeting. That he just got to go freely, and he was almost caught too. Oh my God, we will have to watch a documentary on him someday. It's crazy. I don't know how, like, and there was no recourse for the victims of like Jeffrey Dahmer in terms of the way that the police force handled the entire situation. It's insane. Duncan says liberals keep talking about how the poor lettuce worms are bad and keep calling for eradicating them. How immoral to call for the eradication of an entire species. Well, I mean, technically they're a parasite that does such enormous harm. So technically it's actually self-defense to get rid of them. And they're honestly just a worm. Like, what purpose do they serve in the grand scheme of the ecosystem that is our planet, except to be parasitic? And they kill a lot of people too. There are people that are dying from this poor poo lettuce worm. So I don't know what you're talking about, Duncan. I don't know what you're talking about. This is how every dictator justifies their atrocities. So true, King. How can you side with Duncan, Siret? I'm sorry. I'm gonna try and pronounce your name. Sreyax? Is that how you say it? Sreyax? I hope I'm saying it right. How can you side with Duncan, Sreyax? How can you side with Duncan? I feel hurt and offended that you would not take my side as the streamer here. Hello. Come on now. It's not that I'm justifying atrocities. It's I'm trying to protect my people from these like poo worms that are literally like dehydrating you to death. They're parasitical and contribute nothing to their society. They deserve to be eradicated. I'm not saying that they deserve to be eradicated. I'm saying that we need to defend ourselves with them. So if they stay within their own realm of like, I don't know, like how do they survive? Like, do they need to live in the human body to survive? Isn't there a way to just like get them to go away and leave us alone and stop making us die? Shaking my head, so common. Okay, fair enough. You got me there, Duncan.
Were pushed back to 2030.
I give up. You got me there.
Governor DeWine, who
I was actually thinking about that the other day. I'm like, how many like groups of fruit fly communities have I genocided with vinegar and soap water whenever they invade my home? They're like, your guys are just pests. I just need to get rid of you. I'm like, but I also can't live with you because you're destroying the food that I need to survive, and I don't particularly feel like ingesting your babies all the time. I don't know. Duncan says, I'm merely defending my people from these parasitical beings. That's all. Oh my God, you're ripping me a new one, Duncan. You're ripping me a new one. This isn't fair. Get me out of here. Oh my goodness, get me out of here.
was a Republican, announced in June that he no longer believes in the efficacy of the death penalty as a deterrent.
That's good, because it doesn't actually work as a deterrent. It's proven. It's been proven that, like, by and large, like, heftier prison sentences, including the death penalty, isn't actually a deterrent to crime. The things that help deter crime is actually, like, uplifting people out of poverty, appropriate mental health care, and, like, other things that actually address the cause issue, rather than trying to be like, if you do this, you're gonna... Because that's not actually gonna stop the crime, because, like, you know, the death penalty is kind of like a retroactive kind of punishment. It's not actually, like, effective to deter anything. Shrek says, this is all very long bit to... I have to say, Duncan goes for quite a bit. Duncan says, it should be a crime to insult you. I don't think so. Punishable like 50 years in prison. That seems a little bit lengthy, Duncan. Besides, I haven't insulted you. I even relented, to your point of view. You're right.
It is today impossible to make the case that the death penalty is a deterrent.
Yeah, it's not.
I no longer believe the death penalty is a deterrent to
hey,
murder.
Progress. We'll take it.
The moral justification I had for voting for the death penalty simply no longer exists.
That's good. That's growth.
For the state to take a human life, there must,
Is he not Republican? He is a Republican, which is why it is so shocking. And it's just like, okay, this is fantastic. We will take whatever growth that we can get from the Republican Party. Like, that's the thing about Mayor Zohran Mamdani. I don't think that he's some like world changing like person or anything like that. But it's like, oh, he seems to be doing anything at all for the people of New York. That's absolutely fantastic. Even if it's just like relatively surface level, which it doesn't seem to be. He seems to actually be targeting like some of the poorest of his constituents. Like, we'll fucking take it. Yay progress. Yeah, exactly. Yay progress. We will take it. We're not going to shit on people when they make good decisions like being against the death penalty. We want to encourage that. Morality is just cringe, not gonna lie. Too outdated. Ugh. What do you mean, morality? What are you talking about? Well, wait, no, never mind. I know what you would say.
There must be evidence that in
we gotta
doing
rule
so,
with an
it will
iron
help
fist,
protect the public.
financial first, and everything
That
else.
the threat of that action will deter someone from committing murder. For the reasons stated above, I do not believe that argument today can be successfully made. Nor do I believe that there's any chance in the
Self-interest is the
future
best way forward.
the facts
Okay, we
that I have
disagree
cited
then.
to support that belief will change. Therefore, I believe Ohio should abolish the death penalty.
That's good.
One of the men on Ohio's death row who received the reprieve from Governor DeWine is Keith Lamar. The new date gives Lamar, his attorneys, and supporters more time to fight for his freedom. Lamar was sentenced to death for the murder of 5 fellow prisoners during the 1993 Lucasville prison uprising. He and his attorneys say he's innocent and was wrongfully convicted. His trial was held in a remote Ohio community before an all-white jury. He's now spent over
Life
30
sentence should be
years
abolished too. But what about for an example that I used earlier, somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer? Do you think, or John Wayne Gacy, or people like them? Do you think that life sentence should be abolished for them too? What would be your alternative if releasing them back into society would put society such a high great risk because of their likeliness to reoffend? Like, what do you think about that?
solitary confinement.
I can't tell if you're being serious.
This is an
if you're joking.
excerpt from the animated short film The Injustice of Justice, narrated by Keith Lamar and illustrated by Molly Crabapple, which won the grand prize for the best animated short film at the 2025 Golden State Film Festival.
They should be kept in prison as long as there's a risk for reoffending, not before an assessment is carried out. Okay, that's fair. So if you think that somebody has served a reasonable length of prison time and they have been proven beyond a reasonable doubt that they are not a risk to reoffend, then they should be released back into, general society. I personally, I'm not sure if I'm on board with that whole concept. I think that if you are going to be keeping somebody in prison for the rest of their life, you at least need to up the quality of their life. Like their life should not just be absolute chaos and awfulness and situations that result in trauma and PTSD and mental health issues and, general health issues and all this other stuff. The concept that there was ever, slavery was basically like for-profit prisons, but and we have modern day slavery with the prison systems now based upon the way that we pay inmate workers in United States and other places. But I do believe that their quality of life should be improved if you are going to be keeping somebody in prison for an extended amount of time. I don't think that it's appropriate that they just get sent into small boxes. Like, there are different models throughout the world, and a lot of, some places have much better models than others. I think drug uses should be decriminalized. I think that it should go further than decriminalization. I think that it should be legalized. I used to be very anti-legalization for drugs because it's affected me personally, through my family and stuff like that. But growing up, I've matured as a person, and it's just kind of I do think that underage drinking too. I don't know about underage drinking. I think that there is reasonable limits on when people should drink. Legislation too. Yeah, it should be. Drug use should be legalized. It should be, drugs should be manufactured in this like the same way that alcohol is regulated, taxed, and all this other stuff to make sure that like people who engage with this stuff have the healthiest possible opportunity to engage with it. And yes, people are like, oh, but what about addiction? What about crime and all this stuff? It's like, well, that's par for the course. Like that's mental health concerns that you have to tackle, because regardless of whether it's legalized or not, people are going to become addicts, and it's actually been proven that it's less likely to become an addict you're less likely to become an addict in places where it is legalized. And people don't, like, by and large, just become addicts because they do drugs on their own. There's probably underlying factors that compound the situation and things like that. So there's lots to take care of in regards to people's concerns with legalization. Underage drinking shouldn't be a jailable offense. Oh yeah, I agree. I don't think it should be a jailable offense. 100%. I don't think that it should be a jailable offense. I think that that's absolutely ridiculous. I think it should be an educational offense. I think that it should be an intervention offense where, you know, you check on how the person is doing and what might be driving them. If they have like an addiction going on, what is the source of this addiction, and like that they're properly cared for. But to send them to jail is absolutely ridiculous, and it's not really going to solve anything. Like, what are you going to dry them out and think that they're never going to drink again once they get out of prison? That's absolutely stupid. It just wastes their life and their time, and it doesn't do anything to help create an effective, like, you know, well-adjusted adult in the future.
I was on the recreation yard when it all began. A guard came running out of the building with blood streaming down his face, followed by a masked prisoner who was carrying a weapon and yelling, "We taking over." Against my better judgment, I went inside to check on my personal belongings. A fatal mistake. It was complete chaos. When I made it to my assigned location, I discovered that it was being used as a holding area for hostages, both guards and prisoners. I was thereafter approached by a masked prisoner who gave me the option to either participate or leave. I chose to leave. Hundreds of us gathered on the yard, waiting as the National Guard and Highway Patrol took up watch outside the perimeter fence. Because I had gone into the hostage area without wearing a mask, my name would be mentioned among a vast array of potential suspects. Even though the state concedes that I was never affiliated with any of the gangs said to have presided over the riot, the fact that I was already serving time for murder would play a big part in their decision to indict me. Ultimately, I was charged with 9 counts of aggravated murder. I couldn't believe it.
That was an excerpt from the animated documentary, The Justice of Injustice, narrated by Keith Lamar, illustrated by Molly Crabapple. For more on the news of the reprieve and the latest on Keith Lamar's case, we're joined by 3 guests. Keegan Stefan is a civil rights lawyer with Beldock, Levine, and Hoffman. He's representing Keith Lamar, joining us in New York.
Is stupid. I don't know if he's saying the truth or not, but he orates well. Yeah, I don't know if he's fully telling the truth either, but I think to be charged with 9 counts and then convicted of 5 just because you happen to be in the area, like, it's a little bit ridiculous. It feels like they're like guilty by association kind of a thing. I don't really like that. Abolishing prisons altogether is stupid, though, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. I have to look into this more. I don't know what the whole premise behind the abolish prisons mentality is and what the movement is there. But from my understanding, and I feel like it might be the same of people who first approach and hear the whole abolish the police kind of a thing approach to it, because I don't have an in-depth understanding of what their expectations are in regards to abolishing, the prison system. But I don't see a world where we don't have the need to segregate a certain portion of the population. I think that prisons are definitely overused and overrun because, they're for profit the vast majority of the time, especially in the United States. And the law tends to be heavy-handed for people in one situation where not other. Our justice systems is definitely not equal, despite the fact that it's supposed to be. political spectrum's difficult to categorize nowadays, to be honest. What do you mean? Like when it comes to abolishing the prison system, or just generally?
Campaign manager for Justice for Keith Lamar. She's with us from Cleveland, Ohio. And on the phone from Ohio's death row is Keith Lamar.
Just Keith, generally, I don't know how to categorize myself. Yeah, I'm definitely a democratic socialist, I would say. Leaning more to that, but I have like liberal ideas sometimes.
That this means you still have an execution
I don't think you have to fit
on
tightly
the
into one box or
horizon.
another.
But the significance of the Republican Ohio governor, Mike DeWine, putting off giving you a reprieve on this execution for 3 years. Can you talk about your response and how you learned that you would
what
not
does that
be
mean
killed
politically?
by the state next year?
Well, first of all, I think, thanks so much, Amy, for the opportunity, obviously, to elevate the profile of my case. I think congratulations is in order, because aside from me receiving a reprieve, which I was very relieved, though we anticipated that he would stick to his pattern, I'm still relieved that I don't have that hanging over my head. But in the meantime, I've been undergoing a consistent torture since the last reprieve. Guards have been spraying chemicals in and around my cell. I haven't been able to eat breakfast or lunch over 3 years because of the chemicals that are being sprayed in my food. I'm being harassed constantly. And so, not the death penalty, the execution is one thing to worry about, but I've also, been caught up in this thing called the push-off, where guards try to push you off the planet, try to get you to kill yourself. And one of my friends 2 months ago committed suicide because of the same treatment that I've been undergoing for the past 3 years. But getting to my legal case, I've been working very hard with a formidable team of attorneys who are right now uncovering evidence that has been withheld for the past 3 decades. And so it's been really, really, difficult over the past several months because, with the execution looming, we would have a concern about filing under the impression that we were trying to execute some kind of ploy, and with that now being removed, we're not operating under that type of pressure and that suspicion. So hopefully the courts will take the motion that we're about to file more seriously because of the reprieve. But I'm thankful, grateful for the time that I've been given, because that gives my attorneys more time to develop my claims. Yeah.
So, Keith, we're very, very sorry to hear about this absolutely atrocious treatment that you have been receiving. I mean, if you could talk a little bit more about, is there any recourse? What kind of response do you get when you point out what's happening?
Well, about 4 or 5 years ago, they passed a rule that all guards have to wear cameras, body cameras, similar to police officers on the street.
That's good.
Ironically, the result of them having cameras has allowed them to do more mistreatment, more harassment, because if it's not on the camera, it didn't exist. It didn't happen. So I filed over 50 complaints with.
I like Christopher Hitchens. Really? And he was DemSoc? So would you classify yourself as a Soc Dem or a DemSoc? Who was the guy that I used to really follow? He was an atheist, wasn't he? There was one that went like absolutely crazy. I'm forgetting his name. Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah. That's cool. Me too. I'm a democratic socialist for sure. Richard Dawkins? Maybe. I think so. I think that he turned out to be super Zionist or some bullshit and just like saying some awful stuff. But like when I first got into understanding my own atheism and stuff, I followed him like quite a bit. And then there's Seth from, I remember his logo. It's like an A symbol and something or other. Sam Harris? No, not Sam Harris. Definitely not Sam Harris. Apostate Prophet. I don't think that's the name. I can't quite remember. I'll have to look them up. It's been so long since I've touched into any of that. I kind of got away from it because I didn't like the condescending nature in which they were constantly talking about people who were still involved in religion. And I never saw any level of like growth or empathy towards people who, like, when you're like a child and you grow up into religion, you're indoctrinated into this belief system, and it's very, very difficult to get out of it. And it's like just this constant like shaming and making fun of, like, they're so much smarter and all this other stuff. It's like, at the end of the day, ultimately everyone on this planet is literally guessing, and like to behave that way, in my personal opinion, then you're behaving no better than like religious people who think that they're absolutely right no matter what. Like, there's like no nuance there for understanding that, yes, although science is, reprovable time and time again, there's no real way for us to peek behind the curtains of science and see how things like genuinely started and things like that nature. And it's just kind of like, there's like, and then like the lack of empathy towards how people get into the religious situations that they're in. And it just kind of turned me off from like paying attention to them. Reddit atheism is dead. Long live Reddit atheism. No Reddit atheism. Insufferable atheism, Shreks. No Reddit atheism. Duncan says, I agree, but I think it's important to attack some religious beliefs. Yeah, I think that it's important to counter some religious beliefs because some religious beliefs are incredibly damaging. Like, that's why we now have the capability of gay people being able to get married in Canada and the United States and other places across the world. Because before, if that wasn't the case, religion would be a barrier for them to even be able to be together or even out in public because it condemned them so much, right? Like, there's a lot of religious beliefs that are damaging to society as a whole that I do think 100% is important to push back against and counter. But that's not really what I'm talking about in terms, like, it's not necessarily, the fact that people believe these things. It's like the lack of empathy of what brought people to believe these things and why they might have such a difficult time parting ways from these beliefs. Because, like, think about it. Would you really, like, how easy would it be for you if from, the point of your birth for like a couple of decades, you were constantly having it reinforced that if you do not behave in like these 10 ways, that you're literally going to suffer for the rest of eternity, like for infinity, a number that you cannot count to forever. Like, that's such an unimaginable amount of time that it's such a scare tactic that, like, to divorce yourself from that concept and that belief and that idea when there's such high stakes involved, like it'd be incredibly difficult. So I have some understanding and empathy for people that way. I just don't necessarily like agree with the people that weaponize their religion as a method of oppressing other people. So that's where my difference comes in. Duncan says, this is why disagree with Mehdi Hassan. Oh, on that, even though I'm okay with him generally. What did he say? I'm not familiar with what he said on this topic. What do you mean?
Administration here, and they check
I like
the camera,
Mehdi for the most part.
They don't see anything, they claim not to see anything, and because they didn't see anything, it doesn't exist. Meanwhile, my health has, depreciated. I'm in constant jeopardy. Like I said, I'm losing weight. I'm right now sitting in a plume of fumes as I'm.
I wonder what, like, prisoners would prefer in terms of, like, what they feel would be the best course of action to correct these kinds of things. Obviously, having more professional guards would be appropriate, but like they're undertrained, like, jail guards that don't actually care or have any empathy for they just see prisoners and awful people and the awful things that they did. They don't see any humanity behind the people that are in prison that they're supposed to be taking care of. He doesn't like people who criticize religion itself. Really? That's super weird. Is he religious himself? Is he Islam? Is he Islamic? I can't remember what his belief system is. That's weird. Yeah, I don't agree with that personally. I don't think that we should throw him out like, baby with the bathwater or whatever. I still think that he has a lot of great points, but that's kind of weird. Maybe I wonder if he'd ever come around to that, to understanding why it's important to criticize religious beliefs sometimes and like the impact that they have on people. I personally, like, I don't care. You want to be fucking homophobic? That's your freaking prerogative. Make your world smaller that way. Make yourself, like, ridiculously scared of things that just aren't going to negatively impact you, because when you actually delve down deeper into the things that you're scared of, it just doesn't hold any real water. Like, that's your own personal shit. Just don't put it on other fucking people. Preferably you're not homophobic and you grow as a person, but, like, generally speaking, like, you do you, leave other people to live their lives just what you expect other people to do, except they take it to a point where, like, they just don't want to be, like, offended by, like, the view of, like, anybody who isn't exactly the way that fits their worldview, which is not actually oppression. They just, like, conflate the two things. He doesn't say that explicitly, but he gets quite sensitive. Interesting. I wonder if there would be I wonder if because he grew up, through the religion of Islam, I'm assuming that he's probably experienced a lot of persecution for his beliefs and his and like, you know, just being Islamic in and of itself. There's a lot of Islam hate out there. I wouldn't be surprised if that probably drives his sensitivity to some degree. I wonder what it is for him. That would be really interesting to hear about from him if he ever decided to discuss it. I would definitely cover that. That would be interesting. I hope he does someday. I hope he's also able to come around and understand the importance of being able to discuss these topics. But yeah, Muslim people, by and large, like, they're very, very hated across the world, unfortunately. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that drives a bit of his sensitivity, right? Constantly being prosecuted. He covers it? Okay, awesome. I don't think that we'll cover it today, but I'll save it for maybe Wednesday. We'll look at it. I'm just going to click it so I don't lose the link for later. 6:44. Okay. Is it short or is it long? Oh, almost had it. Oh, there we go.
I mean, I'm pretty...
And you think that you're a liberal Democrat because of your atheist parents?
There's no question.
You think there's a link between atheism and progressive politics?
Of course there is.
Yeah.
I'm a devout Muslim.
I agree with that.
Are you?
Yeah.
Well, religion kind of fascinates me. I'm always fascinated.
I'm on the left, and I would argue that my left-wing values come from my faith.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, what about science?
True, too, potentially.
What about science?
However, I think there are limitations.
Do you think the world was created in 7 days?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
Well,
Islam did a lot for science, as I'm sure you know.
Right,
the history
right,
of science, some of the great scientists.
But
of course, there are fundamentalists, extremists, literalists
Okay.
in every religion that will make a difference.
Well, because when you grow up in Oklahoma, in the Bible Belt,
the world is literally 7 days.
Everything's literal.
But values-wise, justice, equality, religions, most religions, certainly the Abrahamic religions, do push those values. Right now, a lot of Democrats...
Okay. I see what he's saying. However, the application of the way that religion uses these things is more frequently than not in an oppressive nature. So I understand where he's saying, and I feel like this is where a lot of people get their justification for oppression. Like, religion is essentially like a third unquestionable party in a room of two people having a debate, right? And whenever you point to religion, it's like an entity that you don't really have the capability of refuting because it's somebody's belief system rather than a factual thing. And when somebody has like this other party that they can always point to, be like, well, my religion says, and it's just like, well, I can't really question your religion in a way that's going to change what you're thinking and what you're saying, because you're using it as a level of higher authority that neither one of us are particularly capable of actually challenging, because it's just made up. Like, quite frankly, all religions, in my opinion, are completely made up. I don't mind people that use it as like a general guidelines and stuff like that, but it does kind of make me like chuckle a little bit for adults that still believe in religion, like kids that believe in Santa. It's just kind of like, okay, but like, yeah, the way that religion is used, despite the fact that it might be based upon the principles of like justice and all this other stuff, doesn't necessarily mean that that's actually how it's implemented. Triax says, the sort of atheism promoted by the likes of Dawkins and Harris and Hitchens don't matter anymore, and the men themselves were a mixed bag. Harris is just relegated to doing his podcast. Dawkins has fallen in love with an AI. Thankfully, you can be atheist without reading an inch of them. Yeah, I'm glad about that too. Because, yeah, one of the things that turned me away from them rather than atheism was their behavior and treatment and views of other people. It was incredibly pompous and like looking down on people like, oh, we're so much better. And it's just like, well, are you really if you're behaving this way? Like I don't really know. I feel like you're just like the same, the opposite side of the same coin kind of a thing. Duncan says, yeah, a lot of them became right-wing grifters. Oh no, that sucks. I think he's underappreciating the level of religious doctrine there is in Islam that contradicts progressivism. I think that that's true, honestly, for all religions, especially Christianity. While Christianity says to love thy neighbor, it's often touted by Christians that gay people should be, stoned and put to death and all this other stuff. And it's just like, it's very contradictory. And I don't think that it's specific to one religion necessarily. But in my opinion, it is also the person that is holding that religious belief and how they decide to interact with their own religion, because I don't think that Mehdi Hassan is anti-LGBTQ in any measure. So it is very much not just the religion, but also the individual who's interacting with that religion and how they, engage with it, in my personal opinion. Shreyek says, all religions are conservative. Yes. Yeah, I think to some extent they definitely are. When you think about when religion was developed and how long ago it was, is it any surprise that it doesn't necessarily line up with the 2026 beliefs that are more progressive and modern in nature? Because religions have, one of the steadfast things about religions that gives them so much credibility is how old they are, not necessarily how much they adapt to modern day life and existence, right? It's very, very regressive, I guess you could say. Both deserve critical lens, though. Yeah, I agree. Mehdi is your classic progressive uncle. Is he? Is he uncoded?
Democrats are proud Christians.
That's not necessarily bad if he's like leftist uncoded.
Many people, James Tallarico in Texas, are running on a kind of you can be a Democrat. Does that bother you?
Yes.
Okay.
To be honest, I don't like religion and politics at all. At all. I don't care what religion it is. I think that we need to be a completely secular government. And a lot of this comes from the damage of being raised around hyper-religious evangelicals.
I'll let her talk before I make a point.
Who turned out to vote for Trump.
Not a bad thing, haha. Okay, good.
And the social justice and all that stuff.
I do believe in a secular government. However, I don't think that there is no place for religion in government, because religion would need protection under government, whatever government rule there is, to ensure the freedom of choice of religion, including the freedom of choosing no religion, right? So I do think that in some aspects there is a role for religion in government, just not in terms of, necessarily making policies or anything like that. But they do have a space in the government, just not necessarily in the ruling aspect of government. Shreyek says, I first remember Mehdi when he had a debate with Dawkins about religion. The verdict back then was Mehdi got cooked. Really? Uh-oh. I feel like Dawkins is a slick talker. I don't necessarily think that he's as intelligent and whatever, like this great mind that he presents himself to be. But I would be curious about seeing that also. Yeah, he wasn't as coherent here. Yeah, that's all right. I'm assuming that it was a long time ago, right? When you're first faced with the challenges of certain aspects, and you haven't had the opportunity to think deeply about them and contradict Dawkins and stuff. It doesn't make sense to me. Dawkins talks about philosophy when he doesn't know about that. Yeah. It was back when I was young. Yeah, Mehdi's been around for quite some time. I like Mehdi Hassan. He seems like a person who likes to grow. Now Dawkins spends his time whining about trans women and flirting with Claude AI, while Mehdi is still a respected journalist. Yeah, I haven't kept up with Dawkins in probably at least 12 years or so at least. So he completely fell off my radar. I have no idea what he's been getting up to. Back when my knees weren't clunky. Do you got arthritis, Duncan? Me too. I got arthritis in just one of my knees. Yeah, I haven't paid attention to them in a long time, since I started getting like turned off of their attitude towards other people. And it's just like, okay, I don't like care if you're an atheist, like fantastic. I'm an atheist myself. Like, I don't care if you're agnostic or religious or whatever, but this whole mightier than thou, regardless, like it just doesn't jive with me.
If you talk about that doesn't exist in that sect of Christianity.
Can I correct you there?
Yeah, correct me.
People say hyper-religious evangelicals voted for Trump. White evangelicals
That's
voted
exactly
for Trump.
right.
Hispanic and black evangelicals did not vote for Trump in anywhere near the same numbers. So when I see stats like that, I think maybe it's less to do with the evangelical and more to do with the white part. Maybe the race is driving people to Trump more than the religion.
That's
because
okay.
clearly there are
If your hands still work, that means that you can game and shit.
religious Christians who are not voting for Trump in the same numbers.
You can still
And
knit
I wonder whether,
in your old age.
Are we allowing this one extreme part of Christianity in the US, the Christian nationalists, the white evangelicals, to warp our view of all Christians or all Muslims or all believers?
It certainly has mine. I mean, to be
clearly,
honest with you.
You're saying it scarred you as a child growing up in Oklahoma. I get it. Growing up as a liberal atheist in Oklahoma must have been hard. And
I get that there are like Christian light people, what I call Christian light, that don't take the Bible literally, that have something personal inside them, wherein they get serenity and there's no desire to push it onto other people. I understand that. What I grew up around, white Christian evangelicals.
You retire and going off to a monastery soon, you guys? What monastery? What are you going to do there? Wouldn't you be bored? Do they have TV there? What do you do in a monastery? I remember watching Sister Act, and they were like, there was a scene where they had to like thread beads onto like, I think they were making rosaries or something like that, and it was nearly impossible to do. Become a hermit? Oh, dude, I'm already a hermit. Hermit life is actually pretty like underrated. It is G tier. Fantastic. What are your hobbies? Do you have any? Okay, let's get back to this.
If you think about evangelical preachers, televangelists, and think about Trump, it's the exact same human being. Grifters, consumed with
Trump doesn't even
money.
pretend to be a Christian, really.
Right.
But he's managed to get all these people on board. I mean, the cultish view that these evangelicals, white evangelicals in the Bible have for Trump is astonishing. I think it's one of the most bizarre aspects of the base. Like, I get cults. Like, there are lots of personality cults in the world. I've never objected to the Republican Party becoming a cult.
Without the internet?
I've objected to him
with
being
just
the
meditation?
cult leader.
That's what you do? You just meditate all day? Do you think you'd reach enlightenment?
That's the guy you picked. Like, you could have picked anyone else. Like Ronald Reagan, I understood the worship for Ronald Reagan, the movie star, he won the Cold War, whatever bullshit they built around him.
Yeah.
But Trump I will never get. Like, you guys picked the twice divorced,
Makes perfect
adulterous
sense to me.
casino owner because of the hypocrisy.
No, he is such an extension of evangelical Christianity. I would go to
how they're the ones who are saying all these moral values. They used to be the moral majority guys, and
That
then you
doesn't
get
mean that they actually
the fundamentally
believe, though.
immoral,
Right.
most
From
immoral
their
man we've ever
churches
seen.
They just like literally like they just use it to feel like superior to other people, right? And then they use that feeling of superiority to justify the oppression that they do to other fucking people. Okay, we're
rift the shit out of their working class
You go to,
attendees.
like, the big church telling
Yes, and it's a Bible thumping,
what I want to do,
black and white worldview.
Because I need to retire. I've been working too long. Fair enough. Do you think you'll actually be able to retire? I hope you get to retire. Would you want to move to like a monastery in a warm place with nice beaches, and you can sit on the beach all day just drinking wine and stuff like that?
People literally believe in spiritual warfare, and they speak in very simple black and white terms
they want
about
a strong
it.
man.
Good versus evil. What does Trump talk about? Good versus evil. And they live in this. I remember my friends in high school
homework
and
for
junior
too
high
long.
concerned that there were demons in our presence when we were
How much longer
at
do you have
slumber
homework
parties.
to
And I'm
do?
like, what? There's a demon in here? And they believed it literally. And they believe that he is the second coming of Christ. But
I believe in good and evil. I just happen to think Trump's on the evil part of that equation.
Well, there's no question. I'm just telling you the link for me as a person from in the Bible Belt. He is exactly like an evangelical preacher.
Do you think that radicalized you more politically, being around those people growing up?
No. My mother is a voracious reader, incredibly, insatiably curious. And so my life was this juxtaposition of being around my friends that I wanted to fit in with. And they had this very black and white world view, consumed at like age 10 with being virgins. Then I'd go to my mother, and you could ask any question on the planet you wanted to. She invited critical thinking. Yes. She invited I would ask them, well, why would God commit genocide on the earth and flood everybody? That doesn't make any sense if he loves you so much. Like, oh, we don't question our faith. Satan's clearly getting in your head, Jennifer. I'd go home and ask my mom about it. She's like, well, that's ridiculous, Jennifer. Let's read it.
4 years more. Oh, you got a long way to go there, Duncan. Also, how can you be a wine mom at 18? I guess it's possible. Although it's very young to be a wine mom. 4 years, you can do it. 4 years is going to pass faster than you think. You'll get through it. No problem. Guarantee you. I'm going to retire, though, so it's fine. That's good. After you finish your studies, right?
And all of this. And she embraced open inquiry.
So my dad was very much like that. My dad passed away a few months ago, but was a man of faith, not a quote unquote religious man in his outward ability, but clearly a believer in God, believer in Islam. But he also encouraged
today
me and my
morning,
sister
you're gonna retire. I'm gonna retire. So you're gonna retire today, this morning.
Asked his questions, controversial questions. He didn't say just blindly accept whatever you're given. And I attribute a lot of my politics to my dad, and clearly you got a lot from your mom. The recent years, the Trump years, the podcast years, do you feel yourself moving more to the left?
Yes, there's no question. I was a liberal up until this last election. And then I would say I'd probably midway through, I started really turning further to the left, maybe when Biden didn't bow out, when Merrick Garland didn't charge the higher ups, when he only charged the low level offenders and let the elites that funded January 6th off the hook.
Yes.
I started getting dismayed. But you have to understand, too, that when you are a liberal, what I would call an MSNBC liberal, which is what I was, in Oklahoma,
you think you're a communist?
The reflection, is that I am a crazy communist. So when I started podcasting, somebody on our comments called me a moderate or a centrist, and I was like, oh, what? You called me a...
It's so funny.
But it was so true.
Yep.
But I was so offended by it. But I've definitely moved further to the left. And I would say, some people like to say radicalized. I would say I've been deprogrammed from corporate news propaganda and corporate Democrats. And I understand that within the Democratic Party, you have corporate Dems and progressive Dems. And I'm a progressive Dem.
I mean, I worked at MSNBC.
There you go. That was good. I like Mediathon. I think it's fantastic. That was pretty good. We're going to go back to the prison situation, though, and talk about that a little bit more and learn more about that, because I think it's interesting.
To you on the phone, but I have
it's
to
also
sit
an important topic to cover
because that's where the signal is strongest. But I'm right now in a cloud, of a bewilderment as I'm trying to communicate to people, the specific details of my case. And this
I'm
is
still liberal and central left, so You don't consider yourself more progressive leftist? Like, you don't consider yourself very left? You're more centrist?
Under for the past three years since the first reprieve. So while the reprieve is, particularly important, it also means more suffering. And I'm trying to be available for these interviews, for these opportunities to speak out my truth. But it's, they're not making it easy, and I suspect that the harassment is being done with the approval or at the behest of the administration.
But you also consider yourself a Dem?
It's blatant. They're doing it with impunity.
Demsoc?
With no concern or risk of losing their jobs. And I'm pretty much laughed at on a routine basis whenever I bring it to the administration. It's to the point now. It doesn't even make sense to file complaints. Because all my complaints have fallen on deaf ear right now as I'm speaking to you. My lips are.
No, I'm not a Demsoc.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, maybe that was
Keith Lamar.
Brain.
Mike DeWine, the Republican governor, has come out against the death penalty. Can you explain why, then, he has granted a reprieve as opposed to commuting your sentence? Your supporters, you are calling for your freedom. But if you can explain how this works, he just says he can't get the execution drugs to kill you. What are you calling for right now?
Yeah.
Maybe we take back that progress for praise of like this Republican having like the enlightenment that they claim to, because you can't just say that you're against the death penalty if you're then going to continue carrying out the death penalty, and like the only reason why you're not executing people is because you can't get those drugs, right? Like, you got to follow up your actions with words, otherwise it's just bullshit, and especially when there's people's lives on the line. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, Mike DeWine, at the end of the day, is a politician. As he himself stated, he was one of the architects who put in place the execution policy here in Ohio. You know, he's about to retire. I think he's well into his 80s now, and so he's thinking about his legacy. You know, but he's at the end of the day as a politician, he's doing the political thing and passing the buck basically for the next person who comes in line, which if it's a Republican, you know, you can expect the death penalty to be, the deaths to resume here in Ohio. You know, Mike DeWine asked the voters to vote to abolish the death penalty, but you're asking poor white people, the same people who voted for Trump overwhelmingly here in Ohio, to do something that they have some type of psychic need for. You know, it's like, you know, I'm in here and they want to see you suffer. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the whole thing. And so they also heard the news that I got a reprieve.
You changed your name.
The prison immediately.
Welcome in.
And
didn't he shoot in self-defense? This guy? No, you might be thinking of a different person. So Keith Lamar, he's on death row for, there was like a prison riot essentially, and other prisoners died, and you know, he's claiming that because he wasn't wearing a mask, he was pointed to or identified as one of the people that committed some of the murders. He was charged with 9 murders from that prison riot, and he was convicted of 5 and then put on death row. And just recently his sentence was not necessarily commuted, but it was reprieved for 3 years. And so I did. You mistook it for that. That's okay. Ugh. Dude, the fact that there's so many people on death row that you can mistake them for, like, you know, the death sentence should essentially be abolished. I think I'm fully for the abolition of the death sentence. Like, these stories shouldn't be a thing, right? Yikes, yeah.
Hey,
you think that the death penalty shouldn't be abolished, or yikes that's what he did, or what's your response to?
But I'm making this call under duress. I'm living under a strain. And the reprieve.
Duncan says, I don't think the current set of liberals across the world are effective or principled enough, but I don't think I want a more radical set of policies. Okay, what would you do? Okay, so what you're saying, Duncan, is that you think that if liberals were more effective in even enacting the current policies, that you would be more satisfied with the Liberal Party? Yikes, that's what happened. Yeah, like I think it's like, I'm probably quoting the statistics wrong, but like 3% of people on death row are like innocent, or 3 people on innocent people a year get executed on death row or something like that in the United States. Like, it's awful just for that statistic alone, because our you know, judicial system is obviously not perfect. It's far from it. The death penalty should be abolished.
While good and on the legal sense, so you can give us more time, it also increases the pressure and harassment that I'm undergoing.
Keith Lamar, again, we're so sorry to hear about this distressing treatment and the conditions under which you're living there. I wanted to ask you about comments you've made about the disproportionate number of convictions and executions in Hamilton County, and whether you think those have changed at all in the duration in which you've been imprisoned, and what the reasons are that you've said, all-white juries, jailhouse informants, etc. If you could just elaborate.
Yeah, when the riot happened, they were looking for prosecutors to prosecute the crimes, and they picked Hamilton County because of Hamilton County's dubious distinction of receiving these death penalty cases. I think they were only second to Texas at the time. And Mark Piedmont from early 1990s up until now used the same MO of using jailhouse informants, withholding exculpatory evidence. I mean, this is their MO. This is the DNA, the culture of this particular.
I'm torn about taking away the death penalty. Yeah, why is that, Evo? Why? Because you like I personally understand where people come from for wanting the death penalty. Like, there are people who have committed just literally some of the most atrocious crimes that you could commit onto a person or people, at like indescribable levels of torture and torment before finally taking their lives. I understand the desire for it, but just based upon the principle alone that we're not effective enough in our justice system to ensure that no innocent person unfortunately loses their life. That alone is like even if I somehow manage to argue myself out of all the other excuses, that alone is the baseline that's just like, okay, that's my absolute red line. You can't convince me otherwise. Absolutely not. Oh, I don't know why it blocked your message. I'm sorry. Pedos. Yeah, I have fantasy land feelings about what we should do with pedos versus reality of what we should do with pedos. Like, ultimately, like, I don't know if there's any way to like effectively integrate like active pedophiles into society and reduce the level of risk that they pose to society. I don't know what the solution is, right? I've never heard of any like current solution, and maybe like the answer to that is because everybody's like, well, we should just get rid of them, kind of a thing, rather than like, because there are some people that just literally do not care, right? But I think that although the desire to eliminate them in totality, I get it. I think that there's probably more humane ways of doing that rather than just executing, especially for people that haven't offended but recognize that they have these like proclivities to engage in detrimental behavior towards like minors and things like that. It's incredibly complicated and way too long to get into today, but I understand where you're coming from. A part of me wonders if anyone would actually choose the death penalty over life in prison. Do you mean like for just generally? I agree about the wrongful convictions. Yeah. Just generally, I was talking about that earlier, and about the humanity of like, because some people who end up in prison for life, they're in solitary confinement, and it's an awful situation. It's literally like torture, right? To me, solitary confinement is just as bad as the death penalty. I think both should be abolished. If you're needing to separate people from general population, I think that there's probably more effective ways that allow people to still interact with people. You know, they should have access to a clock. They should have access to reasonable amount of outside time. They should be treated humanely, despite the fact that they might not be safe to be around other people. I feel like there's a way to build prisons that would allow them to still be able to interact with people from a safe distance, right? I don't think that the current method of isolating people is designed in any way that isn't just meant to be like a form of torture, like a form of mental torture. Duncan says, in order to prosecute anyone, you need a crime, I guess. Yeah. Right? You eliminate crimes, you eliminate prisons. I don't know if that's a potential given the way that humans can develop. Like, psychopaths don't grow up trying to be psychopaths. They're just kind of are, right? Like they either through nature or nurture, one way or the other, likely a combination of both, they just are. And that's of no fault of their own, although their actions are still their responsibility. They did not, at some point in their life, they were still innocent children. Just because they're psychopaths doesn't mean they're automatically guilty of committing a crime. And there are lots of psychopaths out there that don't commit any crimes whatsoever. And so, it's a difficult balance to figure out. But, Evo says, people convicted of crimes, what if we gave them the choice? Yeah, I mean, we give people who are in Canada who are terminally ill the option to, end their lives. I don't know of the efficacy of that, because once you're in the prison system, you no longer have a level of freedom and autonomy of choice, right? Like, that's why, prison rape with guards, like, you don't get to sleep with guards if you're a prisoner. Like, guards do not get to sleep with prisoners. because it's rape. Like, there's a level of authority. The government has such a level of authority over your life that you don't necessarily have the freedom to make a free will choice versus somebody who's just ill, kind of a thing. So I understand why that might not be plausible. Duncan says, stumbled across a group of people in some hood and they're armed, LOL? Shootout gonna run in the car? Yes, please, don't stop typing, Duncan. Get to safety. What the frick? GTA 5, oh my god. You're playing GTA 5? Or you're currently in GTA 5? Please clarify. That's terrifying if it's real. Please tell me you're playing GTA 5. Good Christ. Both? No, it can't be both. It's only one.
Prosecuting office. And here in the early,
if it's real life, get to safety, please.
A lot of those cases that was prosecuted 10, 20
Just give me 2 seconds. I have to both grab a snack and grab a drink. I'm going to let this run while I'm away.
Because of the misconduct are being overturned. And the same thing he did in all these multiple cases that are now being overturned, he did to me. He withheld disculpatory evidence. He coached witnesses. I've only seen, based on the estimation of my attorneys, 30% of the evidence that was collected. And they're talking about killing me. And so, this prosecutor's office was handpicked. My case was, shoved into this all-white county, Ironton, Ohio, where all-white jury was all but certain, and they convicted me with absolutely no evidence at all.
Well, Keith, I'd like to bring in your attorney, Keegan Stephan, who's here with us in the New York studio. Keegan, if you could talk about what this reprieve means and how it came about now. What does it actually mean for what might happen to Keith?
Sure. I mean, the most important thing by far is that this reprieve means that Keith Lamar, who is one of the most brilliant and loving humans I've ever met in prison or outside, will not be executed for another 3 years. That is so meaningful to him and so many people who he loves and takes care of and educates on a day-to-day basis. For his legal case, that means that we have another 3 years to litigate his innocence, which is absolutely critical. As Keith said, we were coming up to a deadline when we would have needed to file to make sure that this case wouldn't have just been tossed at some juncture as being a last-ditch effort. And it's not a last-ditch effort. We've been investigating now for over 3 years. We've uncovered incredible new evidence, very powerful evidence of his innocence. I've spoken to eyewitnesses, uncovered additional materials in the record that have me believing that he is absolutely innocent. There's no question in my mind. So we are now in the process of putting all of that into a motion for leave and a motion to vacate his conviction, and we'll be filing very soon. We will then have all of this time to litigate it, to get courts to decide on it, and hopefully by the time 3 years rolls around, he will be exonerated and a free man.
And finally, Amy Gordeev, what are your leader, campaign manager for justice for Keith Lamar? What are you and the supporters of Keith calling for now? How are you organizing?
Well, we are facing the departure of our Governor Mike DeWine, in January. And right now we're in an unusual moment of his political history where he has the power to do something extraordinary, and that is to pardon Keith. We're asking and calling on as many of your viewers and anyone they can share it with to sign the petition to Governor DeWine, asking him to look into this case and do the right thing, do the moral thing. He spoke of his morality and his beliefs, and we want him to take it one step further. And that petition can be found at keithlamar.org/petition. We ask people to follow us on our social media. It's all one word, at
weird. They didn't include the link.
And we really need to make our choir sing loudly now and show the government what the collective cry is of people who are feeling and caring and who've come to this conclusion with us. And as Keegan just mentioned, that evidence will soon be made public and available, and it's unquestionable at that point. Anybody who's a thinker will see right away that Keith was framed, and it's not just his word, it's all right there for anyone to see. So we just ask everyone who can help us spread the word, because that in our current society seems to be the squeaky wheel gets the grease, as they say, and the more support we have, I think the more compelling our cry will be when we take our petition to him in November.
I want to give Keith the last word. Keith from Ohio's death row, your final comment to the world right now.
I mean, one of the things that, I was listening to the run-up to my segment about what's going on in Israel, what's going on all over the world. And it's, I'm emboldened always watching your show, Amy, that people are speaking up, standing out. And Audre Lorde once said that your silence will not protect you. And that's the thing that I want to send out to anybody who might be listening to this, who might be going through any, oppression or any type of evil or whatever it might be. That speak out who you are, and you will find or discover that you are not alone. And that's been one of the, the big, blessings in my life. And I'm fortunate to, I would, want to thank all the people who are supporting me, but there's too many people to thank. But here we live in a capitalistic country, and Frederick Douglass said, you might not always get what you pay for, but you're going to pay for what you get. And so all the people who have been, funding my campaign, funding my legal fund, I really, really want to thank you. It has made all the difference, all the difference in the world. And I just want to thank you and your team, Amy, for once again helping me highlight my case. It really, really is invaluable what you all are doing for me, and I'm really, really grateful. Really, really grateful. Thanks so much.
Well, Keith, we're going to continue to cover your case. Keith Lamar has been granted a reprieve by the Ohio Governor Mike DeWine for 3 years, a reprieve from execution. His supporters, like our guest, Amy Gordeev, campaign manager for justice for Keith Lamar, and attorney Keegan Stefan, are now organizing to call for the stopping of his execution. Thanks for watching Democracy Now!
I
on
wish
YouTube.
him luck.
Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss
every
a video.
day when you're on death row, basically you're constantly dying, right? Because you never know if you're actually going to be set free. You never know what's going to happen to you or anything like that. All right, we're going to move forward. Can Netanyahu defy Trump on his Gaza peace plan? And obviously, yes, because he has. He's denied the peace plan. I'm surprised that Trump, it feels like such a contradiction to be constantly supplying Israel with weapons at the same time of working with a peace plan when, how long ago was October 7th? The justification for continuing the firing onto Palestinians and in Gaza and the West Bank and everywhere. It feels so hollow because the level of damage that Israel is doing by comparison to any damage that, Hamas could do it does not compare to any level. And so it's just kind of strange to me that Donald Trump is trying it all. I wonder if he's doing that for perception's sake, knowing that Benjamin Netanyahu is just going to turn him down anyway. But at least he can get the credit for at least putting in some effort. I don't know.
The U.S. brokered 15-point peace plan for Gaza.
Mamdani and Abdul are pragmatic, but I don't know about the DSA. What is this in reference to? Megan Rumor comes across as indecisive and ineffective. I don't know who Megan Rumor is.
Territory. The international.
Defying Donald Trump. This is Inside Story.
Co-chair of the DSA. What brought up the DSA for you?
Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Per Nyberg. Not even 2 weeks old. The U.S. peace plan for Gaza.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think that the DSA in general is ineffective. Yeah, I don't I like Abdul and I like Mamdani for the efforts that they seem to want to push forward. Like, I understand that people are like, oh, they're not far enough left for me and all this stuff. I was like, all right, good for you. Like, whatever. Like, they're stepping stones. If we could change things overnight, it would have been changed already. You asked me about it earlier. Okay, I'm sorry. I completely forgot. I like Mamdani and Abdul for the most part. I don't think they're going to be world changing, but I don't think that the world has the capacity to change overnight. And if it does, it definitely wouldn't be in the direction that we want it to go.
Gaza has been rejected by Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Under this deal, forged after months of work by Donald Trump's Board of Peace, Hamas would disarm and Israeli forces would pull out of the Strip.
Which is a requirement that Benjamin Netanyahu has claimed that he wanted a long, long time ago. And I'm pretty sure that he wanted Hamas to like lay down all of their arms. And for me, it was just like, I think that that's a insane expectation, because that just leaves them incredibly vulnerable to just being like wiped the heck out. And I don't put it past Netanyahu to just turn around and do exactly that. But it was something that Netanyahu has had on his list of requirements for a very long time. And one of the things that makes me feel like Netanyahu is obviously incredibly insincere with his desires is because whenever any of his requirements are met, he constantly just moves the goalpost a little bit further. There's always something else that he wants and a justification or a reason for him to not capitulate to his own desires and requests, essentially. It's ridiculous.
Netanyahu's rejection prolongs the hardship for nearly 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, devastated by Israel's genocide.
But I don't think that he will.
With an election looming in October,
I think
the Israeli Prime Minister is
too big of a
desperate
piece
to
of
keep the support
shit.
of his right-wing...
He also knows that it would be detrimental for him and his himself to do this kind of stuff. He needs to stay in position of power for his own safety. Same with Donald Trump.
Allies and voters who oppose this deal. But there are risks for him too in defying Donald Trump and his peace plan. So why has Netanyahu taken this stance, and what could be the implications for all sides? We'll put that to our guests shortly. First, though, this report from Imran Ullah Khan.
After months of diplomacy, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected a U.S.-led plan for Gaza's future, putting it back to square one.
As long as I am Prime Minister, no Palestinian state will arise. Not in Gaza, not in Judea and Samaria. Neither Fatahstan nor Hamastan. As for specific things coming up in the news lately, I want to be precise here. Israel rejects the 15-point document. I heard people saying, you didn't say it. So here I am, saying it again. Israel rejects the 15-point document.
Yeah, because he has no desire. Benjamin Netanyahu has no desire for peace. I don't believe that Trump is actually taking this seriously either. As I said earlier, he's probably just doing it for the credibility of trying to claim oh, I'm working on Palestine and Gaza. I don't think that he cares. I don't think that either one of them care. I think that Trump is secretly behind the scenes backing Netanyahu. He knows that Netanyahu is not going to accept any of this. Netanyahu's just said he's not going to help Palestine in any sort of way. It's just not going to happen. So the only hope that we have is in 2028, we get a replacement for the Republican Party, somebody that is not pro-Israel, who will do what is required to protect Palestine, given it's undeniable. It is a genocide. And if you deny it, then you're just, in my opinion, a Zionist freak and a genocidaire. It just does not matter to me anymore what you claim to believe, what you claim to say. If you do not support or back Palestine and the ending of the genocide that is happening there, then you're just a Zionist freak who is blood hungry and just wants to wipe them off the face of the earth, and you are a genocidaire, and that is it.
July, U.S. President
Evo Moon says, when does Trump take anything seriously? Yeah, good point. You're right.
Trump,
you're right.
Along with the Gaza Board of Peace, announced a 15-point document
even just
that
in
would
my statement, I
disarm
was giving
Hamas,
too much credit.
which would work in tandem with the phased withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. Trump posted on social media what he called a historic agreement for Hamas and all other armed groups in Gaza to completely disarm. He insisted Israel would have the security it needs. Just a day later, Trump said Israel was very happy with the plan. Hamas said it would implement the agreement, as long as Israel fulfills its commitment to withdraw its forces. But within Israel's parliament, there were serious disagreements. Israel's finance minister and far-right leader, Bezalel Smotrich, wrote to Benjamin Netanyahu to say the plan is dangerous to Israel and completely contradicts the disarming of Hamas. Netanyahu acknowledged disagreements with Trump after meeting the Board of Peace envoy Nikolai Mladenov. And on Sunday, Netanyahu formally rejected the agreement. He said Israel will not withdraw from Gaza until Hamas is fully disarmed. Benjamin Netanyahu's announcement comes as legislative elections are set to take place in Israel in October. Analysts say the move could bolster support for Netanyahu with hardliners. Since the peace plan for Gaza was announced last year, Israel has failed to meet its obligations. It continues a path of daily strikes across Gaza and has redeployed troops throughout the Strip. It now occupies more than 70% of the Palestinian territory. The International Stabilization Force and the Palestinian Technocratic Committee, set up under the 15-point U.S. plan, cannot begin their work of rebuilding and providing security in the Strip until the peace agreement is in effect. With Netanyahu's announcement, Gaza's future and
we just watched last night, I'm just going to roll it back for a second, Children of Men. And as we were watching it, although it took place in Britain, like the destitution and the destruction of all the buildings, it immediately harkened back to like Palestine and what's happening there. And this feels like this could come out of the same movie, especially to the end scene of the movie. In the movie, like by comparison, it's pretty much the same situation, right? And if you're unfamiliar of the ending of Children of Men, without spoiling it, it takes place in a refugee camp or essentially an open-air prison, very much akin to what is happening in Palestine and Gaza. It's really interesting to see those parallels sometimes in movies, and it genuinely, they did such a fantastic job of like creating these film sets and stuff like that it looked very, very realistic, because this is real. Unfortunately, for some people, they have to live through this type of experience on a daily basis with constant gunfire and constant artillery and like trying to find food and water and just constant life for them is a constant struggle of survival and trying to get your basic needs met while surviving in a war zone, right? In a genocide area. Like it's crazy how, like, I don't understand how people survive this, and the resilience of Palestinian people, I feel, is almost unmatched. It's like unprecedented.
With Netanyahu's
Duncan says Zionism is impossible without Jewish majority. I don't think so. And annexation would destroy that. So I don't know what their deal even is. I don't think so. I don't think that that Zionism is impossible without Jewish majority. There isn't currently a Jewish majority of the majority of Jewish people are anti-Zionist, or they're not, or indifferent to Zionism, right? Like they're not Zionists. Only 30%, I'm pretty sure, of Jewish people are Zionist, right? Like it takes like the exterior of the entire world to permit this to happen. That like you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist, right? Like that's a misnomer. As in a demographic majority? Yeah, only 30%. As far as I'm aware, only 30% of Jewish people are Zionist. So they don't even have like a demographic majority.
Announcement, Gaza's future and prospects for Palestinians who live in the Strip remain as uncertain as ever. Imran Al-Khan, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
Let's go ahead and bring in our guests now. Joining us from West.
In Israel, they would need a Jewish demographic majority in order for Zionism to be. That's not true. Because like, then you'd say that like in the United States, you need the vast majority of white like Americans to be like white supremacists in order for white supremacy and the KKK to be a thing. Unless they go down the route of apartheid. I don't know. I don't agree with this. I don't think that that's true. I think to be a ruling class, they would definitely need to be a majority, or just like what happened in the United States, have enough people vote in a person who is Zionist and have, if there is genuinely true and free elections, not enough people to vote and outvote a Zionist. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with what you're saying. Take that back, LOL. What do you mean, Evo Moon?
Jerusalem is Mitchell Barak, founder of Kivon Research, Strategy and Communications, and a former aide to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the Foreign Ministry. In occupied East Jerusalem, Adnan Julani, director of the Palestinian Academic Society for the Study of International Affairs. And joining us from Washington, D.C. is Ambassador Mark Ginsburg, a former U.S. diplomat who's worked on Arab-Israeli affairs. Thank you all three for joining us here on Inside Story. Mitchell Barak, I want to start with you. You've worked closely with many senior government officials. What's your read here of Netanyahu's calculus? I mean, it took him about 10 days before he actually came out and rejected this plan. So what made
We're
him...
not all KKK. No, I'm saying, like, for what Duncan to be saying to be true, then the vast majority of the United States would need to be members of the KKK. But I don't think that that's true. I'm just using, like, the United States as an example. I was just giving you crap. Okay, thank God. Thank God. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that the vast majority of the United States is the KKK. I was just using that as a proxy example. Like, yeah. Whew. Scared me there for a second.
Arrive at this conclusion that this was the right thing to do, and even, doing it so publicly, almost like a slap in the face of Donald Trump.
Well, this is the Middle East, so this is his opening position.
Nah, I think they're secretly in cahoots behind the scenes.
Because this is the.
I think that they're in cahoots behind the scenes, and they like to present this whole idea that they're actually like at battle with each other when really they're just aligned. I don't believe any of that shit.
Opening position. He's agreed in the past to the 15-point plan, and the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, Israel will agree to whatever President Trump wants Israel to do. That's the way the foreign policy has been working in this country since January 20th of Trump's second term. He decides what we're going to do, and we do it. And we could complain about it, we could oppose it, but at the end of the day, Netanyahu has come out publicly on record many, many times saying he supports a two-state solution, although most people say he doesn't really believe it. And he's also come out in favor of this plan. Now, I will quote, it reminds me of, and in the media today, it's already said, an anonymous source in the Board of Peace has said, on the ground, Israel is abiding by the 15-point plan, but the public pronouncements are not helping Israel, and they're going to pay twice the price. So I am reminded, though, in 1998, when Netanyahu was prime minister, that he asked his then minister, Ariel Sharon, who would later become prime minister, to help him.
I think the only thing he cares about is his own endeavors.
To the Likud Central Committee. He says, I'm here because Netanyahu asked me to help him. But I don't know, will I be helping Netanyahu's right hand or his left hand? So to use that quote, his right hand is rejecting solidly and publicly President Trump, but his left hand is directing the army to, on the ground, get ready to implement the 15-point plan.
All right, let's hear from Ambassador Ginsburg in Washington, D.C. I mean, do you think that Donald Trump can read these two different sides of Netanyahu that you're hearing here from Mitchell in West Jerusalem, that there is a public version and there's a sort of backside version where he's actually not rejecting that plan?
I really agree with Mitchell on this assessment. I mean, here.
Just a second. Duncan says Zionism, Jewish nationalist movement with the goal of creating and support of a Jewish national state in Palestine, the ancient homeland of the Jews. Yeah, that's what Zionism is, or the belief that it is the ancient homeland of the Jews. Is that they want to take back their homeland, they're therefore entitled to it because it says so in a book, or that's what their history is. Can't be a Jewish state without a demographic majority. No, that's not true. Because I feel like you're just like conflating two things. Like I understand what like Zionism is, but that is a like belief system of a specific demographic of Jewish people. But like to be a like you can be a Jewish state without being a Zionist state in nature, right? Like they could stop the genocide in Palestine, they could stop the expansionist efforts that they're making and just hold on to the land which they have and even give land back and have their own portion of Israel and decide to make that a Jewish state. And it would not necessarily arguably be Zionistic in nature, right? Like that's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be Zionistic in nature in order for them to be like a Jewish state. Does that make sense? Like the two are not like exclusive to each other. They can be very separate concepts because what would you define as Zionism? So Zionism is like what is happening in Palestine, the desire to destroy Palestine, to get rid of all of the Palestinians and like West Bank, all of that stuff. But I don't think that it is Judaism, right? I don't think that, you know, to be a Jew, to like have a Jewish state would be Zionistic in nature, right? Because to be like in your own definition, it says in Palestine, not in Israel, what is the Israel proper of today, but in Palestine, to take over Palestine, to genocide all of the Palestinians out of that area and take over more land and accumulate more land and you know, what settlers believe they're entitled to and things of that nature. But there are plenty of Jewish people who live in Israel who would be completely fine and satisfied, if not more happy, if the genocide in Palestine stopped, and it would still be able to be classified as a Jewish state, but they still would, like, they wouldn't be committing genocide, right? Does that make sense? Not current day Palestinian borders. I agree. I think that, like, I understand what you're saying there, but I don't think that they're, like, just by the concept of an idea, let's say that a whole bunch of Jewish people decide to migrate to a completely uninhabited portion of the Middle East and develop their own country and make it a Jewish state, that would not be Zionistic in nature, and their desires would not necessarily be Zionistic in nature. It might just happen to be that they feel like, yep, this is where we want to live. So for me, I guess if I'm understanding your argument correctly, that to be Zionistic in nature, you would have to take over the land that you feel you're entitled to and like essentially eradicate all the people that are currently living there, what is happening now with Israel and Palestine. Does that make sense? So just having a Jewish state would not necessarily be Zionistic in nature. I understand what you're saying. I just don't think that it fully tracks. And I don't think that, like, you know, to equate every single Jewish person with Zionism is fair.
In Washington, the Trump administration has been relatively silent about Prime Minister Netanyahu's rejection of the plan. But on the ground in Gaza, there are reports that the Israeli Defense Forces are facilitating reconstruction of certain parts of southern Gaza to enable the development of new housing, even though that would precisely violate what Netanyahu has just stated. Let's be clear here. This is all public posturing by Netanyahu on the one hand, and on the other hand, there is a substantive need for him to be able to claim that he has been able to force Hamas to be disarmed. I mean, whether it be Prime Minister Netanyahu or former Prime Minister Shimon Peres, there's not an Israeli Prime Minister facing a re-election who's going to be able to go before the voters and say, guess what? I agreed to a plan that still leaves Hamas armed and dangerous to us.
All right. You two seem to be in agreement on that. Let's hear the view from Adnan Jalani in occupied East Jerusalem. Do you think the Palestinians see this as just public posturing and that, in fact, Israel will eventually go ahead and agree to this?
I understand the argument, but if like every politician who ran had the same principle that Hamas doesn't need to disarm, then what choice would the Israeli people have?
This plan?
Of course not. The what Palestinians see is that Netanyahu has initially entered this.
Just a second. Duncan says, when I'm referring to a Jewish majority, I mean a demographic majority rather than a majority in popular belief. Zionism by itself is the goal of establishing a Jewish state in the current day borders. Yeah, that's where I think we're having the differential of opinions, and I understand what you're saying. The current day borders of Israel and potentially beyond. There are disagreements between Zionists, which is why there's different strains of Zionism. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that Zionism does not, to have a Jewish state does not necessarily mean that by nature it's going to be Zionistic in nature. And I just explained why that could be a possibility, right? And why I think it's important to separate the two. Excuse me, because it becomes dangerous territory to for Jewish people to make those statements, because being Zionistic is not a very favorable thing by and large for people. Personally, it's a belief system that I don't think that I could ever get behind. I don't think because of the nature of what Zionism entails, which in my opinion includes the destruction of Palestine. I don't think that Zionism could exist except for potentially retroactively if they're successful with completely eradicating all Palestinians. Zionism doesn't have the potential to exist without the potential to invade and overtake other people's lands for colonialism essentially and genocide. Without that, arguably there is no such thing as Zionism. Doesn't necessarily have to be everywhere, but it was the case in Israel, as Zionism was the founding ideology of Israel. I am not even commenting on the ideology itself. I'm just saying that was the historical definition of it. Okay, I understand. I don't think I think that the government of Israel is definitely Zionistic. I just don't agree that there is a majority population in Israel that is Zionistic, arguably. Unless you're thinking, well, they vote for Netanyahu, therefore that makes them Zionistic in nature. Is that what you're getting at? Because the vast majority would have to vote in Netanyahu, who is himself, obviously, undeniably, one of the biggest fucking Zionists on the planet. No, not really. Okay, I don't understand what your point is, Duncan. I'm just trying to say it's that I don't think even by statistic standards that demographically speaking, there is no majority within the Jewish population that Zionism is the majority belief.
The Trump peace plan since October last year as a maneuver. Your guests have referred to what is happening on the ground. What is happening on the ground is that the preamble of this agreement, which is phase one of the agreement, has not been implemented. There has been no cessation of Israeli military activities for the past 10 months. There has been no significant entry of humanitarian assistance. What was agreed on was 600 trucks, and what is being entered into the Gaza Strip is far less than this amount. The yellow line, which was supposed to be a ceasefire line, has been expanding and moving towards the Gaza Strip more and more, starting with 52% of the Gaza Strip and now talking about more than 70% of the Gaza Strip. And the area under Israeli control on the Israeli side of the yellow line is becoming more of a complete destruction, and Israel treats that area as part of Israel. And these Israeli governments are talking about settlement and restoring settlement to the Gaza Strip. So I don't know where this optimism is coming from. By my two other colleagues in this conversation, we Palestinians don't see anything of that happening on the ground. And we see that the Israeli government is continuing with its initial plan, and that is the total annihilation of the Gaza Strip and making life miserable, impossible, so that people will pack and leave.
Okay, there we go. Duncan says, I think the difference is emerging mainly because of linguistics rather than difference in ideas. What do you mean? Like, where do you think is the linguistic differential compared to our ideal understanding?
Mitchell, when Netanyahu spoke to his cabinet on Sunday announcing this rejection,
I get the premise of what you're saying. I don't understand where the difference is. If you're able to pinpoint where the difference is, so I can try to understand, then maybe we can get on the same page.
When I've printed both Donald Trump's 20-point peace plan for Gaza, the 15-point plan from the Board of Peace, both of these documents reference a path towards Palestinian statehood and self-determination. You seem to think that Netanyahu will eventually agree to this. Is he also going to say yes to Palestinian statehood?
I mean, he's only a minute. Just earlier in the video, he literally said that he would never agree to a Palestinian statehood. So I don't know why people I don't know why people are having this conversation like it's a potential. He literally openly said that he would never agree to it. So it drives me crazy.
Pathway, not the destination.
But doesn't the pathway include the destination?
Get there. And right, so he agrees to the pathway, but not the destination. Listen, he's on record a number of times over the last even 20 years from the Bari speech, the famous speech from the first time around when he was Prime Minister.
Ultranationalist wing
the Y
of
River
Zionism
Accords, when he gave away,
that exists, wherein
13% of what
they
was
seek to
part
annex
of,
the Palestinian territory. Okay, well, what's your definition of Zionism?
He says a lot of things, and he said he's in favor of a Palestinian state because he has to. But none of his supporters internalize
because by the
that
definition
or even
you sent me.
So he
then
pays
it
lip
aligns with
service when he has to.
So, but what's
now
your
he said he's
definition?
going to oppose it as long as he's prime minister because he wants people to test him and he wants to stay prime minister. So that's what this is all about. At the end of the day, it's what's going to be. President Trump is going to decide what's best for the region, the Board of Peace. I think Netanyahu understands that, but he's just trying to get past the first hurdle, which is he's got to pass the election and remain prime minister. And right now, that seems very, very difficult for him based on the last number of years, some of the security failures, there were successes as well, and where he stands now.
But Mitchell, is there no risk here that he might be upsetting Donald Trump when he's rejecting his plan?
I think he already rejected. I think he's already rejected publicly, and I think President Trump has already been on record and stated that he's lost a lot of patience with Netanyahu, and I think he realizes that.
All for show.
But right now, again, it's his right hand is opposing it publicly, but his left hand is on the ground implementing the 15-point plan. So the question is, what's going to be over the next few weeks? By the time we get into when people are back in Washington after the summer in the first week of September. Let's see where things are. I mean, President Trump has a lot on his hands right now, both in terms of Gaza is unfinished, okay, with Israel and with the Palestinians, that he hasn't been able to declare victory there, really, and also with the Islamic Republic of Iran, meaning he's still technically at war with them, and he's included us in a ceasefire. There's not a ceasefire. He may attack again. The Straits of Hormuz are open some days. They're closed some days. He may impose sanctions. So he's really got to finish off these big problems for himself and these issues. So I think that Netanyahu understands that, but this is electoral posturing at this point, and we'll see where it comes out. And he realizes that he's going to need President Trump's support come the October 27th election. And if he really gets him angry, it may be that Trump throws his support behind someone else.
Come on. Come on now. We all know that's not going to happen. Again, I think that all of this, Netanyahu and Donald Trump are fighting is literally all just for show. And it's tired and it's old and it's very frustrating to hear people play into the bullshit. Get real here. Are you serious? Do you honestly, genuinely believe this to be true? Come on. I don't take these people seriously on any level if you genuinely think that Donald Trump and Netanyahu are actually sparring behind the scenes and having genuine disagreements. Donald Trump loves Benjamin Netanyahu. The United States government, by and large, loves Israel. I cannot imagine Donald Trump turning on Benjamin Netanyahu anytime soon. And even if he does, that doesn't necessarily mean that it would be of a benefit to the Palestinian people.
Adnan, I see you're shaking your head. I want to come to you in just a second. First, though, I just want to hear from Mark in Washington, D.C., this relationship between Donald Trump and Netanyahu. As we're hearing here from Mitchell, you've got this Iran war that's been dragging on for much longer than those 4 to 6 weeks that Donald Trump said in the beginning, right? And now he just refocused his energy on the Gaza issue. He issued this statement that's now been rejected. And of course, we've heard from Donald Trump multiple times. He says that when it comes to Netanyahu, Netanyahu is like the junior partner. He says that Netanyahu knows who the boss is, that he calls the shot, if he tells Netanyahu to do something, he does it. And of course, we've had these reports about those angry phone calls between Donald Trump and Netanyahu. So has Donald Trump lost his influence over Netanyahu at this point?
All of it propaganda.
Well, Mitch, I don't think he's lost his influence. I think the issue here will always be U.S. ties that are embodied between Trump and Netanyahu. But let's face it, Trump is desperately trying to turn away from the Middle East right now because he knows that he's lost enormous political support in the United States going into our midterm elections. Number one. Number two, Iran and the United States are not going to reach any agreement anytime soon regarding the Straits of Hormuz, as well as Iran's future nuclear weapons program. And number three, all politics being local, let's face it, Netanyahu has to deal with his own problems, which Mitchell already alluded to. But the Palestinians are paying a price of Netanyahu's government constantly violating the former ceasefire, engaged in terrorist activities on the West Bank. The humanitarian crisis is not getting any better, but Netanyahu is not going to pay a price for that because in the end, I'm not sure who's running away from whom the fastest. Trump is desperate to be able to claim that he has victories, whether it be in Gaza or in the Straits of Hormuz, and be able to say to the American people, he's brought peace to Gaza and brought peace to the Straits and to Iran. And Netanyahu is going to be left holding the bag with his own electorate. That's the situation on the ground.
As we're talking about the situation on the ground, Adnan, you've got both the humanitarian situation and, of course, the military aspect of what's going on the ground. When it comes to this humanitarian situation, we just got word a few days ago here from UNICEF that at least 300 children have been killed since that ceasefire took effect. So on average, one child every day. Do you think that Hamas signed up to this ceasefire, this peace deal, this disarmament deal, calculating that Israel was going to reject it, or were they actually serious about disarming?
Well, Hamas has become really serious about disarming because they see that there is no other alternative, there is no other choice. Even though their doctrine is based on resistance of the occupation, they realize and they understand now that the situation on the ground does not allow any kind of military resistance. They see that the world has basically shattered the principles of international law, and that the conduct of war now is basically as a result of sheer power. And as such, they see that themselves being destroyed, and they see the Palestinian people being destroyed, being forced out of the country, being starved. Given these circumstances, they now believe that military resistance is not in the best interest of their cause, let's say, not only the Palestinian people.
Mitchell,
but allow me also to go back to Netanyahu and his positions on the two-state, because basically, Mr. Barak, refers to Netanyahu's acceptance of the two-state, but the reality is that over the past 20 years, he has come with multiple
I'm going to let him finish and then I'll read your comment,
remarks
Duncan.
saying and boasting that he single-handedly basically prevented the establishment of a Palestinian state. When it comes to a Palestinian state, or when it comes to advancing a two-state solution, Netanyahu is not a politician. He is an ideologue. He completely rejects the idea of Palestinian rights in the form of self-determination, in the form of statehood, and any step that brings or that moves in that direction is one that he completely rejected. What is done on the ground is completely total efforts to make the two-state solution impossible on the ground. And this is what we are witnessing in the Gaza Strip on a daily basis.
Okay, I see what you're
All
saying.
right, I see Mitchell shaking his head. I see.
Just a second. Duncan says, essentially, the establishment of a Jewish state within the borders of mandatory Palestine, not current day international recognized Palestinian borders. Yeah, I don't think that we're disagreeing. Like, for me, I'm going to be honest with you. The entire premise of how Israel came to be, because it's only 70 plus years old, right? Like, it's not a very old country. It's one of the youngest countries in the world. I think that it was immoral, right? Like, I think that the entire development of Israel was immoral because it started out with, like, the Nakba, essentially, right? Like, there were Israelis there before that occurred, but the development of Israel is ongoing, and so I think that it's important that we, develop our understanding of Israel. The fact that they invaded Palestine and annexed any portions of Palestine is, in my opinion, a part of the genocide. Like, retroactively, from the point that it becomes a genocide. Like, it's not just when I think about the Holocaust, it's not just when the Germans started upping their murdering of Jews and started sending people into concentration camps and gas chambers. No, it was from the start of the effort to get to that point. That's how I personally classify it. So it's everything that encompasses the entirety of the Holocaust. Same with the genocide. So for me, the development of Israel, it did not need to take place the way that it did. The fact that they were going into Palestine with the desire from the start to annex Palestine in any level, regardless of what the current borders are, means that it was genocide from the start. It's been going on for quite some time. A lot of people don't classify it this way, but I understand what you're saying. I don't know if this clears things up for you. Like, the fact that it was something that often happens with oppressed people is that they're not even included in the decision making of what happens with their own lives. Like you mentioned the British, and how they were involved with negotiating with Israel, but where was Palestine in this entire decision making process? They were not included by any means and any measure. They weren't even considered, right? And so I understand what you're saying. The end goal of Zionism is to establish Israel within those borders, which they accomplished in 1948. By definition, the existence of the state is contingent on Zionism. That is not to say that the existence of the state is illegitimate or immoral or anything. It is simply about the founding of the state. Okay, I understand what you're saying. I understand where we are having a difference in communication and a different understanding. I agree with what you're saying. I understand what you're saying now. I agree with what you're saying. But I'm saying that the development of a Jewish state in and of itself does not necessarily have to be Zionistic in nature, right? Because I gave that example of if a whole bunch of Jewish people decided to move to a specific uninhabited area of the planet, doesn't necessarily even have to be the Middle East, and establish a new state, that would not be Zionistic in nature. Does that make sense? And I don't think that all Jewish people are Zionist is also what I'm saying. Yes, doesn't have to be. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing with you that the development of Israel wasn't necessarily Zionistic in nature. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be. And that's why, like, it's important to, like, understand that not all Jewish people are Zionist in nature, especially now. And, like, the vast majority of people are not Zionist in nature when it comes to being Jewish, right? Like, to make those things intertwined can be very dangerous for Jewish people. And it's a very unfair thing to place on them also. Duncan says Zionism was a specific ideology in a specific region, so it would be inapplicable either way to other regions, although they did explore other options. Yeah, I don't fucking understand, like, except for, like, religious beliefs that they, like, that is their holy land and, you know, that's where they need to go. I don't understand why they couldn't have developed the state somewhere else and not taken this route. Like, does that make sense? Like, why couldn't you have just worked in other ways in a longer term goal to integrate yourself into Palestine? Why did you have to go the genocidal route?
Mark nodding. Mitchell, go ahead. You first.
Yeah. I mean, let's just bring in some history and some facts. Netanyahu, as the finance minister of Israel in 2003 in Ariel Sharon's government, voted for the disengagement from Gaza, for the withdrawal from Gaza. He can talk as much as he wants. He voted for it in the cabinet
20 years
twice
ago.
and in the Knesset. That's a fact. And guess what, Adnan? From 2005 to 2023, guess who was elected in 2006 in Gaza? It was the Islamic Resistance Hamas terror organization. Now, what exactly they were resisting in the name of Islam in Gaza, which they actually controlled 100%, and from 2005.
Because the establishment was motivated by history and religion. I think that, yeah. I mean, I have my opinions about that, obviously. Like, I don't think that religion is a justification to do any of this stuff, but without getting too deep into it and too off track, like, I agree with you. Like, I've got feelings, essentially. I got feelings about it.
Until 2023.
Thank you for explaining, by the way, Duncan. I'm glad we were able to figure this out.
1.3 million to 2.3 million, and you'll still say they were under Israeli occupation. It was the fastest growing place in the world. They added 1 million people in 20 years. So let's face it. And all of this could have stopped. We're talking about Israel, and Netanyahu rejected the 15-point plan. In the last 2 years.
Yo, homeboy, just because you're loud doesn't make your point any more accurate or correct or somehow more valid. You can speak at a normal volume. You have a microphone. It's picking you up. And this is giving the vibes back in the early times when cell phones were just developing and people would, like, scream into their cell phones because they thought that the other person couldn't fucking hear them. Please stop, please. Oh my goodness.
3 years, at any time. The Islamic Resistance Hamas terror organization could have surrendered. They could have laid down their arms. They could have exited from the 250 kilometers of tunnels that they built from 2005 to 2023 in order to attack Israelis in Ashkelon and Ashdod and Ofakim. But instead of building Gaza, they picked up weapons. They attacked Israel.
What would be the point in, quote unquote, building that area if Israel's just going to continue colonizing it and annexing it and genociding and bombing and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Like this one incident has resulted, like October 7th, has resulted in, look at all of the aftermath. Are you literally trying to tell me that that is somehow justifiable? Come the fuck on. That's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely not. I don't believe anybody that says that. I think that anybody who says that is likely just indoctrinated or being dishonest, like morally dishonest.
Resigned any time, had they gotten rid of their weapons any time after October 7th, 2023
Garbage.
Until today,
don't believe that
this
at all.
would have been
absolutely not true. Not true by any level. Because I don't believe that even if Hamas disarms, that Benjamin Netanyahu will stop the genocide. I don't think that that's true at all.
finished, the destruction wouldn't have happened.
Mitchell, let me just jump in there. Mitchell, let me just jump in there. We're talking about more than 70,000. Hold on, Mitchell. We're talking about more than 70,000 Palestinians who've now died since this war started. Is that warranted based on what you're talking about now of Hamas not laying down their weapons? Does that warrant the Israeli actions?
How many of them are terrorists? How many of them are terrorists?
How many of them are kids?
70,000. 20, 30, 40,000. And at the end of the day, when they have our hostages,
40,000 of the 70,000 people killed were terrorists. Come the fuck on, you loser. Jesus Christ.
Underground, and we're trying to rescue them, and and they continually attack us and fire rockets, then that was done in self-defense. At any time after October 7th, after they breached our borders, after they killed 2,000 people and took hostages, they could have laid down their arms and stopped, and those 70,000 would have been killed. But they're in the Islamic resistance until the end, until the destruction of Israel. So they have to bear some responsibility for their government, their terrorist government, which is controlling the Gaza Strip.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in Mark Ginsburg here as well in Washington, D.C. Mark, I know you want to jump in.
Listen, I have watched Benjamin Netanyahu do this minuet, the kabuki theater of his support for a Palestinian state. Whatever may be his legacy.
I don't know why because it said Jews and Zionists, maybe we're close together. I don't know why it automated you. That should be fine to say. What you said is right. I'm not disagreeing. Not all Jews are Zionists. I'm saying that there's not even a majority of Jewish people who believe in Zionism or Zionist in belief.
Hopefully he won't be prime minister much longer.
It's a minority.
The facts on the ground in the West Bank,
it's just a ruling minority, Gaza, unfortunately.
The fact that he is willing to forfeit normalization.
That's why when I asked how you classify who is and isn't Zionism in terms of determining whether or not there is a Zionist majority, which is your principle, that's what I was like, well, do you mean if people vote for Benjamin Netanyahu, who is a Zionist himself, is that how you classify people as Zionism?
Saudi Arabia over his refusal to take the concrete steps that are necessary, that the Saudis are insisting on for a pathway for peace. All of this suggests there's no way on God's good earth that this government, the most far-right extremist government in Israel's history, is going to backtrack and stop what essentially is its encroachment to stop any potential formation of a Palestinian state on the West Bank, let alone in Gaza. What's going on in the West Bank, Netanyahu has to be.
I mean, in fact, I wouldn't even come to the conclusion that Zionists are all unworkable with. I think they'll have to be engaged with diplomatically. I mean, to some extent, to de-radicalize them, if that's what you mean. But what is what's your premise there?
Held accountable and fully accountable for the terrorism against Palestinians, the violation of the Oslo Accords, everything being done to destroy any hope for a Palestinian state
in order
to
reach
Bank.
A solution too. Yeah, okay, I understand what you mean.
I want to get to you here towards the end. We only have a few minutes left.
Right?
Let me just give you some background information here, because according to a research from Pew Research in March, there is a rise in negative views of Israel and Netanyahu in the U.S., and not just among the Democrats, but also among Republicans, especially those under 50. For people in Palestine, for Palestinians in the West Bank, in Gaza, is there a feeling that there is international support for that cause, or do Palestinians feel that they are left alone to fight this fight?
Well, on the ground, they feel that they are being left alone. And definitely what is happening on the ground is basically a proof of that. This was one of the Palestinian fears and one of the things that have happened with, and one of the Israeli objectives actually, with accepting the Trump peace plan at the time, which is to relieve international pressure on Israel. But Palestinians are also aware of developments on the international arena with regards to public opinion and particularly in the United States. The fruits of this may not be seen on the ground in the immediate terms, but they are hopeful that that change in the public opinion is going to reflect itself in election ballots and decision-making circles, both by present politicians as well as future politicians, and that would contribute to giving the Palestinians some kind of rights and recognition of their plight over the long term. Unfortunately, this is not happening. Unfortunately, what we are seeing today from the remarks and the positions of Netanyahu is that at least 2 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and more than 5 million Palestinians altogether are being used as basically an election pawn to get Netanyahu elected one more time. But in reality, they continue to suffer. In reality, the ultimate objective of such government is basically an end solution whereby Palestinians are no longer in the land of historical Palestine.
That is
just a second. Duncan says, I don't really think de-radicalization would be the right approach to reach a solution with either Israel or Israelis or Palestinians. If there were any solution that would emerge, if I had to guess, would come by engaging talks between two parties that would be morally perfect, that won't be morally perfect or even morally net positive. Do you mean that, like, for there to be an equitable solution, everybody's going to end up a little bit disappointed? I think for there to be any solution at all that would be, equitable, then yeah, de-radicalization of Zionist beliefs would be required, right? Because if you don't let go of those beliefs, then you are always going to be hardline geared towards achieving those goals. So that's what I mean by de-radicalization, because you have to have some level of, compromise on your beliefs in order to be able to reach that middle ground, even if it's not a net positive for, one side or the other. I think that stopping the genocide, although it's not a fix or anything like that, is, the great quote goes, if you stab me in the back and then you pull out the knife 6 inches, that's not progress. Even if you pull it out all the way, that's still not progress. The only way to make progress is to heal all the wounds and reparations and all that stuff. So I don't think that even stopping the genocide would arguably be progress in terms of Palestinians and be a net positive. It would be at least some level of relief for the continued injury that they are experiencing, although you would remain injured.
Adnan Jalani joining us from occupied East Jerusalem. Also, thank you so much to Mark Ginsburg in Washington, D.C. and Mitchell Barak in West Jerusalem. And thank you so much for watching. You can, of course, see this program again anytime by visiting our website.
I think you might have to research a solution by getting Israelis who are involved in the Gaza war and Palestinians in Hamas or other orgs that might have killed civilians into talks. Why do you think that it would need to involve just them? Because, what is your idea? Why do you have these concepts? Why do you think that it would need to involve Israelis who are involved in the war or Palestinians who are involved in Hamas? Why those two aspects? Because they're the most extreme aspects on the spectrum in regarding this situation, or?
Jazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join this conversation on X. Our handle is at
I'm not
AJ
necessarily
Inside Story.
saying it would.
For now, that's it from me, Per Diver, and the whole team here in Doha. Al Jazeera's coverage continues in just a moment. Stay with us.
All right. That was long. Let's see. What else is there? We might save this stuff for later. We'll listen to this quickly and then see what time it is and see how it goes from there.
President
This
Trump's
is going to
peace
just be a little bit of a
Gaza
recap.
hitting a snag. Israel.
Israel rejects the 15-point plan. I heard that there were those who said, "You didn't say it." but we did say it, and here I am saying it again.
If this isn't turning out to be very
Israel's
different
Prime
from the other
Minister
video,
Benjamin
then we'll switch
Netanyahu
to something
demanding the
else.
full disarmament of Hamas before his troops withdraw from the Strip.
I'm hoping that
It's a
it'll go
risky
through
move in
all
an
the
already
15
fractured
points, or
relationship,
at least a large
breaking with
portion of
Trump in a time where support for Israel is already dwindling in the U.S. I want to bring in CNN's Jeremy Diamond in Jerusalem. And Jeremy, let's just start. Netanyahu is facing re-election this October. Why do you think he spoke so forcefully on this now?
Well, if you just look at what happened in basically the 10 days between when President Trump announced this as a historic kind of monumental step towards establishing peace and security for the region, and when the Israeli prime minister said he rejected this plan outright, what you saw in between was pretty widespread rejection of this disarmament plan by various corners of the Israeli political spectrum, but in particular, the right-wing members of Netanyahu's own government, including the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, his finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, who both said very clearly that they wanted to bring this up for a vote, that they wanted this plan to be rejected out of hand. And then you have the Israeli prime minister at a meeting of his government yesterday saying those very same words, saying Israel rejects the 15-point document that is this roadmap that was agreed to between the Board of Peace and Hamas that would lay out a pathway for Hamas to ultimately be disarmed as long as Israel also takes certain steps, including stopping its strikes in the Gaza Strip, moving its troops back to the Yellow Line as agreed to back in October, and then eventually having a phased withdrawal of Israeli troops. Now, Hamas has responded to this.
I think that that's probably going to be a major point of contention also for Netanyahu, is like the step of moving back to the Yellow Line, because he doesn't want to lose any kind of progress, right? Because if he brings it back, then, you know, if he ever tried to move forward again, I imagine like the world would be like, yo, what the fuck, dude? Like, what's going on? We can't necessarily permit this, and it would just put more international pressure on him, even if it didn't come from the United States.
Bassem Naim, a member of Hamas's political bureau, saying that we expect the mediators and the American guarantor to pressure Netanyahu and his government to adhere to the roadmap and not obstruct the process for internal political and electoral reasons. But it is important to note that it is not completely black and white. And that's because we've learned of already, and we've seen some changes already in Gaza in terms of Israeli strikes that have significantly decreased. An Israeli source had told us that now targeted killings need to be approved at the highest levels of Israel's military in order to move forward. And a Board of Peace official is echoing some of that, saying that while politics are certainly accentuating things right now in Israel, that we are, quote, seeing cooperation behind the scenes. That from a Board of Peace official suggesting that while Israel is publicly rejecting this, they're at least cooperating with certain aspects behind the scenes. Audie.
Okay, that's Jeremy Diamond from Jerusalem. Thank you so much.
Joining us now is David Sanger, CNN politics and national security analyst and author of New Cold Wars, China's Rise, Russia's Invasion, and America's Struggle to Defend the West. David, it's so good to see you. Thank you for joining us. First, want to ask you about
Great
Israel.
To be with you, Kristen.
Israel has, and Israel, topic du jour, has rejected America's latest peace proposal. Gaza under a ceasefire remains very dangerous, a very violent place. So what is the next step to deliver a peace deal? And would a rift between Trump and Netanyahu get in the way?
You know, this is a pretty remarkable rift because they go out of their way to make the case that they are fully in sync. And yet on Gaza, they really have not been since the day when the president went out to sign the initial accord that got the hostages back and ended that conflict, or at least ended that stage of it. And the president declared that, you know, a new age had arrived.
I don't think we should compromise on principles, but we really shouldn't be maximalist either. Yeah, I think that just to start, the initial goal of just having an end to the genocide is like the first step, and then we can take it from there. I'm not looking like that far into the future. For example, like what's happening in Canada, finally with First Nations people or Indigenous people, where there's land back efforts that are actually being initiated. I don't think we're anywhere near that step, but like eventually, maybe that's something that can occur in the future for the Palestinian people too.
And so forth. And he had to drag Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, to that. Now Mr. Netanyahu is engaged in a pretty tough re-election campaign. He's trying to sew up the right-wingers who have supported his government, and he basically just said, no, does not amount to what he called a real disarmament.
For more on this, I want to bring in Mayrov Sunshine. She is a senior Israel analyst with the International Crisis Group. Good morning, first of all, to you. Thank you so much for being on. I'm so interested in understanding Prime Minister Netanyahu's calculus here in saying that Israel would not agree, would not abide, would reject that 15-point roadmap that has been laid out by President Trump. He was obviously under a great deal of domestic pressure, but it's a hugely unusual move to break, of course, with his most important ally. How did he come to this decision?
Because he knows that it's safe to do so.
It's good to be with you, Selma. I mean, we should look at what has happened since Trump forced a ceasefire on Netanyahu in Gaza in October 2025. Netanyahu hasn't actually, embraced the Trump 20-point plan. He hasn't implemented the obligations that Israel is under in the first phase. I mean, Hamas gave back the hostages, and Israel was supposed to start allowing aid to go in. Now, Israel constantly boasts that the aid that's going in is enough, but Gaza is still closed, and the humanitarian situation there is horrible. And so Israel hasn't even implemented. So that's the reality on the ground of what's happening now. What Netanyahu says, as you say, can suit his political domestic needs at the time. So certainly, as long as he's prime minister, I don't think we're going to see any kind of withdrawal of troops in Gaza. Israel currently controls over 50% of Gaza, and then it has extended that control to something like 70%. And so Netanyahu is trying to say, I'm not going to be forced to do any of this. And I think the U.S. knows, and I've spoken to officials on the ground here who say, we don't expect Netanyahu to do anything as long until the election. So what they're saying, what Netanyahu is saying, what Trump is saying is quite different than what's happening on the ground. On the ground, for example, we do see that there has been a scaling back of strikes in Gaza. That doesn't mean that it's come to a complete halt. But Israel has been doing many targeted assassinations, and those have been scaled back in the last few days. So even though Netanyahu will say that he's not adopting the plan, I think in reality, there is a certain amount of U.S. pressure to scale back strikes.
So you say that you don't believe or you don't see Netanyahu actually pulling back from Gaza while he remains in office. But if he's not going to go with the Board of Peace plan, what is the alternative end game for Gaza? Does, as you just mentioned, that occupation continue of Israeli troops just furthermore, or is there a plan here?
I mean, I think for Netanyahu, it's clear that he promised a total victory over Hamas. He promised that Hamas would no longer exist in Gaza, and his right-wing flank in the government has promised that Gazans would what they call voluntary immigration, but in reality, forcible expulsion, that they would build settlements in Gaza. And so this is the line. It's between the status quo that we have now and much further aggressive tactics to get them to leave. I don't see Israel relinquishing its power unless forced to, certainly in this government, possibly also in a different government after the election. So this is the situation, and it's similar to what's happening in Lebanon. The U.S. Forced Israel into a ceasefire. There are troops in South Lebanon. They've kind of frozen the situation. They're trying to keep it, as under control as possible, but they're not actually forcing Israel to do that much. The same here. Israel is basically being forced to kind of just be quieter about it, but not actually take any real meaningful steps. And if you noticed what happened with the Board of Peace in recent days, there was this announcement of a Hamas disarmament plan. There was an expectation that certain Israeli troops withdrawal would start to happen in parallel to certain actions by Hamas. But then all of a sudden, Mladenov met with Netanyahu, Trump met with Netanyahu, and now we don't hear anything about a withdrawal being required before Hamas fully disarms. And I think anybody who understands anything about decommissioning weapons understand that this is a long process, and it's not going to be that Hamas is going to disarm tomorrow and all of a sudden everything will be fine.
Israel has rejected President Trump's plan when it comes to Gaza. Israel is saying, look, the Hamas has to completely disarm before they pull out. Hamas is saying you have to pull out before we disarm.
Are they wearing matching fucking suits? Is this real? What the? I just noticed this. They're literally wearing matching suits. Is this some sort of like uniform situation where they're required to do this? Am I missing something? Is this AI? What is going on here? Oh my gosh, what the heck? That's freaky as all hell. There's got to be something behind this. I just don't know what it is.
And he is stuck with these two factions still going at it. What, in this scenario, do you think is the best way to end this? And what is your concern about how the president has been dealing with what has been going on in Gaza, between Israel and Gaza?
Well, you're correct. You're correct, Sarah. And he's doing it with an October election in the offing, so that I think this is going to be a real difficult situation. I think the 15-point plan the president offered was really dead on arrival from the start. There wasn't buy-in from Israel. There wasn't buy-in from Hamas. And ultimately, what these things have to do to be resolved is what he didn't do in the beginning. We've got to bring in partners in the region. We've got to bring in people internationally to come and enforce anything that's going to be, agreed upon. But right now, there's no expectation that Hamas will really give up all their weapons. There's no expectation that Israel will unilaterally cede that territory they've had, particularly with the elections coming.
Okay. Just give me 1 second, guys. Let me see what's going on.
Y'all were and what was going on, right?
That's fine.
She knows what was going on, ma'am. She saw us.
Whoopsie, sorry, guys.
Okay, well, I'm just not getting.
That's not what I meant to do at all. I was just gonna go big screen for a second. Let's see. This is what I want to do? No, that's not what I want to do. This is what I want to do. All right. Oh, I know what we can do. Let's do. All right. Let's see what will let us. Yeah, fantastic. We're gonna raid out. I know it's been a short stream, but I'm actually really freaking tired. I'm gonna take a nap after this. But we're gonna raid JFK rotting. It should be a really fun time for you guys. I recently found out about them, so I think that I'm sending you to a good place. Thank you so much, everybody who was here. I greatly appreciate your conversation and company as always. And I hope to see you guys Wednesday. If not Wednesday, maybe Friday. And if not Friday, then hopefully on movie night. This Sunday, this coming Sunday, 7 p.m. movie will start at 7:30 officially. We will be watching Enemy of the State. If you want to head in a little bit early to the stream, we'll probably be starting about an hour and a half before to talk about Flock and all that other stuff. But otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Monday or Tuesday or whatever day it is for you. And hope to see you Wednesday again at 1:30 p.m. I know I didn't get into gaming this time, but I will definitely try to get into gaming for sure then. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.